business.
How's your business going, Bull?
The summers are quiet. It's very hard to be in there when it's so quiet.
Oh,
Well,
Because everybody's on
yeah, it's
vacation.
not
here.
We want to be outside.
yeah.
But with school starting, we're able to, we had to dial back on the classes because nobody was coming. to
Coming, yeah.
bother having classes.
What's the new fellow's name?
Um,
I almost said the name.
Dustin.
Dustin. He's a great guy.
He's a good guy.
Really like him.
Yes, very easygoing. He's a little flighty, which is kind of a little straight.
Is he really?
He's good
No,
with the
she's not.
customers, but sometimes
No.
he can't remember the office.
she told me she was.
I got
I really, and so, those are the kind of things where I just wander by and I check the door.
Not gonna be here.
Oh, you'd heard from that.
Annette.
Yay.
Does it say what time it is there? No.
So how's your son?
Not quite
He had a
yet.
busy summer.
That one seems to be.
Yeah, he did really well.
To those of you in the audience, the reason why it looks like we're just sitting here is because we have to wait till 7 o'clock when
Did great at last.
this is not working. Anyway, we have to wait till 7 before the TV starts running. So that's what we're waiting for. And are these mics running?
I don't. Not yet. She hasn't turned it on yet.
Yeah.
He'll be back.
Yeah, they are now. Live.
All right. I hope you heard me the first time. I'm not going to repeat it.
Well, Jack is.
Hi, Tammy.
Does that freak you out when the first one leaves? This is kind of.
Yes, about his mama and younger brother over there. But what was worse was when he went to basic training, because he couldn't talk to him for 3 months.
Well, see, now Jack went to a 3-week camp at the school he wants to go to. And if it weren't for me badgering him by text,
I got a lot of paper stuff here
Oh, yeah.
tonight.
Yeah, I got
not because he's not,
Kid.
he's just that kind of kid.
They're having fun.
Preview of what's to come.
Oh, yeah.
Of course, I don't talk to my mom, but every 2 or 3 weeks because I'm so busy. So, like mother, like son, I guess.
Yeah.
Makes me think I should call my mother more often. Is that a little bit of payback?
You'd be yeah. There you go.
I was looking at.
Calico Village.
Ah, I can see it.
Got it from the golf course. Sale rack.
Pretty much all full up this time. Last meeting, I think they almost didn't have a quorum.
Yeah.
They had one short person.
You made it
short.
by one.
We did go to the behavior time at the fair. Even my son and my husband.
What's that on?
They have, the town has some of the equipment, backhoe and dump truck and that sort of thing. And then, EMS had a bunch of stuff, like scholarship department had we bought and, army car. But the biggie was the helicopter. That's kind of, JJ sent out a helicopter. And, my grandson's eyes were about this big. And the helicopter was over the second a couple of times and then slowed down. So we enjoyed the whole thing.
That was a blender car.
Yeah, well, usually they'd have it here in the parking lot, but it's kind of outgrown that. So they moved it down there and we got there right at 9 o'clock. And people were really streaming in. So it's well received and next year we'll have the second one will understand. This time he was more interested in the people. He's just a year old. And his little head was going back and forth. Ready?
Yep, we're on.
I want to call the August 21st, 2014 meeting of the Farragut Municipal Planning Commission to order. We're going to start out with citizens forum. First of all, do we have a Boy Scout in the crowd?
2, 3,
Would you
4,
guys
5.
please come up to the microphone and I'll tell us who you are, your troop,
and what badge you're working on. I don't know. Do we have pins?
Hello, my name is Colin Christensen. I'm from Troop 444 and I'm working on the Communications Merit Badge.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Brandon Spade. I'm from Troop 444 and I'm working on the Communications Merit Badge.
Good.
Oh,
My name is Jay Kirchner. I'm from Troop 444 and I'm working on the Communications Merit Badge.
Thank you.
My name is Parker Chadwell. I'm from Troop 444 and I'm working on Communications Merit Badge.
Thank you all for coming tonight. We really appreciate it. Do we have no pins?
I don't have enough for everybody.
Okay.
I think there's on there.
Mayor, you had some comments you wanted to make during the citizens forum.
I want to talk about something you'll read about next week probably, but tomorrow David Smoke and I are going to Nashville to receive a grant from the Department of Transportation, and this grant is about $250,000, and it's going to be used to synchronize or whatever you want to call it, the traffic lights on Kingston Pike. It's something that will help to smooth out the traffic and flow a little better, and I'm sure all of you are going to appreciate that when it's up and running. And it's, as usual, it's a small number of cities who get these grants, and we do very well in them, and I'm very proud of that. The other thing I want to talk about is, did anybody see this in Sunday's paper? This is the parade. Anybody see it?
Mm-hmm.
Well, I did. David did. It's about, they call it the America's Best Main Street 2014. And the winner of the America's Best Main Street is the city of Collierville, Tennessee. That's a city that we know very well. Our town administrator, we robbed him from there. And they have this old downtown area that they've invigorated over the years, and it makes Main Street very popular, and it's used a lot by the citizens. Now, this goes on to show about 10 or 20 more of such downtowns, and this is what we strive or are aspiring to in Farragut. We don't have anything that looks like a downtown or a Main Street, but we think we could, over the years, create one. And to do that, we've already put in place some ordinances, like the long-range land use plan, which spells out some areas for what might become a downtown. We also have this town center zoning in place, although we've never been able to exercise that zoning because the things have just not come together, and the economy was a factor. And but we're reconsidering it now, and there may be some interest coming along soon, and that would blend in with what we're trying to create as a downtown. And so stay tuned. But let me tell you something else about Collierville. Their sign ordinance makes ours look puny, and so keep that in mind when you hear people complaining about our sign ordinance. We're not that strict. Collierville is, and it's booming. That's all I have to say.
Thank you. Mark, do you have any training you want to remind us of?
No, there will be a training session I think I've emailed you all about in September dealing with property rights. That is highly encouraged, anyone that can make that. We will be taping that, so, and we can show tape session of that to people that are unable to make that. I'll send out reminders of that, but I think it's the latter part. It might be September 30th.
It is, I think so.
That's what it is.
Mhm.
From, yeah, September 30th. Yeah, and it's in the evening.
And it's here.
Yes. Yes, it is.
Anyone else have any questions or comments on the citizens forum that does not have anything to do with any of the items on the agenda tonight? Anybody on the planning commission? In that case, we'll move along to the approval of the minutes for the July 17th, 2014 meeting. Do you have any changes, questions?
Move for approval?
Second?
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Oppose?
Abstain.
I'll abstain as well.
Abstain as well.
Item number 3, discussion and public hearing on a site plan for the Farragut Express Car Wash at 103 South Campbell Station Road. 2.2 acres, Zone C-1, Rocky Chambers, Chattanooga Engineering Group, applicant.
Okay, this item involves a request for a car wash at the former Silver Spoon restaurant site, which is on the southwest intersection of Kingston Pike and South Campbell Station Road. A little bit of background of this item. On July the 2nd, some of the staff had met with the realtor and the applicant about their desire to put a car wash on this particular lot. We did not know, there was anyone interested in doing something like that at that particular location. That was the first we had heard of it. And after we talked about it after our meeting, we sent out an email to the applicant and realtor that basically alerted them of our concern about that particular use at that location being very incompatible with what is on our future land use map and contained in our comprehensive land use plan. That area at that intersection of Kingston Pike and Campbell Station Road is specified as mixed-use town center. As the mayor was saying earlier, that's really the core of where eventually the town could bring about a downtown from that intersection. So we basically provided information to the applicant about the comprehensive plan, how we arrived at the plan, what the designation for that property was in the plan, and our concerns with that particular use at that location. We mentioned in the email, of course, we would be happy to work with them on other locations in the town where that might be a better fit with the land use plan, but that we couldn't support that particular use in that location because of its inconsistency with the plan. As we indicated in our email, we've been trying to implement various aspects of the plan since it was adopted in December 2012 by the Planning Commission, and something that we're working on right now is the bringing about a downtown, which is one of the key strategies in the comprehensive plan. It was in fact the most important strategy identified by the public and as part of that comprehensive land use plan process. There's in fact a policy statement in the plan on page 5 which says that all town decisions should be consistent with the comprehensive plan. If you have a project that's proposed to be inconsistent with the plan, either that needs to be amended or the plan itself needs to be amended. Since the Planning Commission did adopt the plan, we feel that decisions that come before the Commission should be consistent with the plan, or the plan needs to be amended in that regard. The staff would recommend to deny this site plan at this location because of its inconsistency with the comprehensive plan and the fact that the town is currently working on blending the comprehensive plan with the zoning in the mixed-use town center area. And also, we have reviewed the plan, the site plan. The comments are at your places. There are a lot of comments that are left, 30 items. Many of those are administrative, and some of them are reminders, but that's still a lot of comments that typically in and of itself would be grounds for denying the site plan. That's kind of an overview of this project. I know the applicant's here and they can discuss any specific questions if you have any.
Is the applicant? You please tell us who you are and give us an address.
Sure. My name is Rocky Chambers. I'm the civil engineer on this project. Our offices are located in Chattanooga, Tennessee at 400 East Main Street. If you don't mind, I'd like to give a brief overview of the project and let you know how we arrived where we did. As was already stated, we looked at this property. It was zoned for the car wash, and we proceeded on working with the current owners about taking that abandoned building and turning it into something that's useful to the community. Our client obviously does car washes, and he's hired kind of the premier car wash architect in the area right now. His name is Rick Lee, and taking the comments that we heard from planning staff, he took that building and took the needs of our client and came up with a building that tries to replicate what a shopping center would look like in that area. If you don't mind, I'll show a picture of that. While certainly it's still a car wash, the intent here is to, again, kind of mirror the shopping complex feel that you were going for here, adding some storefront to the various parts of the building, adding some hard surfaces on the side. And that, I believe, may have already been in your package. This is just to kind of let everyone else know what we have here. Also, since the site plan is actually before you this evening, I also brought a kind of a little rendering of the site plan. I'd like to go over some of those features with you as well. The site right now has a tremendous amount of underutilized asphalt. Instead of just leaving that asphalt in place, we'd like to take that out. We'd like to add soften it up a little bit with some greenery, some landscaping, some grass. Certainly still have to leave some of it for the operations, but we'd be adding a lot of trees, a lot of shrubbery to help, again, blend this to more of a natural feel and make it more aesthetically pleasing. This also has the added benefit of reducing stormwater pollutants, allows more stormwater infiltration. This particular developer, he's also built a car wash recently just up the street from you in the Cedar Springs area. Recently completed that one. It's been open for 4 or 5 months now and been operating. Certainly one of the nicer car wash operators that I've had the pleasure of working with, and I'm sure that he'll bring that same professionalism into the community here as well. Is there any technical questions that I can help out with?
Could you trace the movement of vehicles on your site plan for everybody, just so it get
Sure, absolutely.
how it operates?
Absolutely. We wanted to keep entrance to this car wash as far away from this intersection down there on South Campbell Station Road as possible. So we brought traffic in down here at one of the existing curb cuts, but we narrowed it up to keep traffic moving slowly enough. We provided some pervious pavers here to still allow emergency access, but narrowed it up a little bit to comply with staff's comments that we want to restrict that intersection. But cars come in here. We have 2 pay stations up in this area, so they will come in here, enter our pay stations at this location. We have some employee parking here, and something unique to this operator is he also likes to add some prep areas here for people driving pickup trucks. They'd like to clean those out before they go through the facility. So cars enter here, come through our pay stations, come around this green area, and here is really where the tunnel is. And here's where all the operations take place. They'll come through the tunnel. At that point, about 20% of people, or 20 to 50% of people, depending on the area, will actually opt to leave the facility at that time and exit back out of that same entrance. The rest of them like to come over here, and they like to vacuum out their cars, or armor all the cars, or there's fragrance as well. And here's our vacuums, and then our fragrance station down here as well. If they choose to go through the vacuums, they'll actually come down here and then exit down here at this, again, existing curb cut closer to South Campbell Station Road.
So you're coming off of Campbell Station. Your entrance and exit is off of Campbell Station?
That is correct. We're not proposing here to add any additional curb cuts. We're not trying to come off of Kingston Pike there. There's some challenges there, and frankly, we just don't want to deal with that busy of a road and people trying to get into our facility.
That's not on the street that's beside or between it and the next building down.
I'm sorry, maybe I should clarify there. South Campbell Station Road then comes into that road that's beside it, yes. So they don't come directly from South Campbell Station Road into our facility.
Okay.
Here's Kingston Pike, just for orientation. Here's South Campbell Station Road. They turn off of South Campbell Station Road to this access road.
So the large arching goosenecks for the stations are on the north side, right on the Kingston Pike side. Right.
You are correct. There are some vacuums that will be along here and along here. Again, something unique to this developer. A lot of car washes that we work on have the vacuums up next to the curb line, and then you have hoses kind of snaking in and out of the parking lot. It's not very attractive. This developer actually prefers to clean things up a little bit with some arches that kind of keep all the hoses contained, add some additional architectural features there, just to kind of keep things cleaned up. But yes, you are correct. They will be kind of down below this existing hill right there, and then kind of screened with all of these trees along South Campbell Station Road.
Anyone else have any questions or comments?
You know, the only comments I would make, first of all, I want to applaud you for listening to staff, and I think you've made a gallant effort to bring a design to us that might be palatable there. You know, I can tell you, going off of the mayor's comments and my time with the town and involvement, I just can't bring myself to support the car wash at that location.
Mm.
But I think you did get me thinking, because I think you've done a great job of designing the building and laying out the grounds and the landscaping, but again, we're looking to go in the long run. I just can't bring myself to support that particular use of that property.
And what I'm hearing there, just to make sure that I understand what you're saying there, you're really kind of okay with the design. It's just that a car wash is not the use that you have envisioned for that corner.
Right.
Okay.
Any other questions or comments? Please come up to the microphone, please.
My name is Lynn Vandergriff. I'm with Cornerstone Community Bank out of Chattanooga. We're the owners of that parcel. We purchased that property actually for expansion, to put a branch in Farragut several years ago. Unfortunately, the downturn in the economy, plus the fact that apparently every loan we could possibly make up here was a horrible loan, convinced us not to do so. And we have had the property heavily marketed for the last 3 years. We have had 4 contracts in the last 2 years. Each one of them took their 6 months free look and said, gee, we just can't do anything with it. One guy waited until the very last day and said, well, I have to have a curb cut on Kingston Pike. Like, did you not read the deed restrictions? There is no curb cut available on Kingston Pike. This has been the most viable contract that the bank has received. If this contract fails to close, and this user or this potential use goes away, it is possible that the bank may incur further losses on this property. We purchased the property for $2.8 million. It's for sale right now for nearly half of that. I've written off the rest of it. I don't do this very well. I don't speak very well in front of people. I laid a Supreme Court decision on every one of y'all's desks tonight. That Supreme Court decision indicated that, and it was just laid down Monday, the 18th, that in the event a municipality, I'll use the term arbitrarily, but that's not how you all would look at it, I understand, arbitrarily determines that a use for a particular piece of property does not meet what they plan, but not necessarily what is law, that is considered taking. And taking, you must compensate me being the bank. Not saying that that's going to go that far, not saying anything. I'm trying to make you aware of all the parameters. I have a standing offer on the property for nearly $500,000 less than what it is now. And I really don't want to take that $500,000 loss. That would crank my losses up to nearly $2 million on this one particular property. That's unconscionable. It's a good site. I'm sorry it's on the border of the town center and that it's, you know, the gateway to what you all have planned. By the same token, this decision is taking, and I am due, or the bank is due compensation for that. I'm not threatening anybody by any stretch of the imagination. Please understand that. I'm just saying that we have lost enough money already. We cannot afford to lose more. It's a good concept. This guy does a good job. That thing looks like any shopping center that I've ever seen, and I have financed many, many shopping centers. I lived in the city of Franklin for 30 years. I know exactly what you guys are going through. City of Franklin has done the same thing. I don't know that they would have approved it, but they would have liked the way it looks. I know that, because it does look like a business operation. It looks like a shopping center. That's really all I've got to say. Thank you. Do you all have anything for me?
What was your first name?
Lynn, L-Y-N-N, just like our girls.
Vandergriff, right?
Vandergriff, yes, sir. Anything else?
Any more questions or comments?
I have one brief comment. Most of you may remember that I spent quite a bit of time on the land use plan and on the steering committee for that land use plan, and I have a lot of faith in that land use plan and put a lot of sweat and tears into that land use plan. Although I would prefer to see a use more compatible with that land use plan, I don't believe that it is fair nor consistent with the history of this town that the existing zoning on this site is superseded by that plan. This is a complicated matter, and I'm probably in the minority, but that is nonetheless philosophically how I feel about it. Personally, I'd like to see it out of brick. I'm a big advocate of red brick, but nevertheless, it's stone and stucco, and it is what it is. But with that said, I would recommend approval of the site plan subject to the 30 comments being satisfactorily addressed.
We have, before we get into a vote here, we have another comment that we need to hear.
Yeah.
Real quick, if you don't mind, I think that's a technical question that I can address there. Certainly, this rendering that was done, it was done with stone. The architect and the owner, potential owner here, have discussed it, and they're perfectly okay with replacing that stone with brick. I think that's a fair thing to ask, and we have no problem with it.
Tom Hale, the attorney for the town of Farragut. It's not often that we have a discussion about something when the Supreme Court has come down with a decision within 2 or 3 days before, and it's brought to your attention. The decision that has been provided to you is essentially the Tennessee Supreme Court saying what the United States Supreme Court has already said and many other states have already said, and that is that under the Tennessee Constitution, there is the possibility of a party making a claim for what's known as a regulatory taking. And a regulatory taking is a pretty complex concept. If you think about it, every regulation that a municipality adopts affects somebody and arguably affects the value of their property. But that doesn't constitute a taking under federal law, and what the Tennessee Supreme Court has said is that in this state we will now, going forward, follow the federal law as it applies to regulatory takings. I don't think, I haven't studied every single jot and tittle of the federal law on regulatory takings, but I'm pretty confident that changing the zoning or not approving a site plan when you have put in place a comprehensive land use plan that you have intended to adopt and are working to adopt, and you reject that site plan because of the years of planning that have gone into what our future town's going to look like, and you don't want to adopt something inconsistent with that, I don't think that's a regulatory taking. There's still plenty of uses that the property can be put to, and so what you're doing is not taking away all of the value of the property, which is one of the tests that the federal regulations provide. So I don't think it's fair to say that this would be a taking. I think you have the authority under state law to reject this site plan given the circumstances, but you also have the authority to approve the site plan. Certainly it's up to you what you wish to do. Thank you.
I'm concerned about the traffic. That's a very busy area where the traffic is heavy through there. There's a backups can cause backup into the intersection. Have you looked at that at all as far as?
Yeah, absolutely. And your Farragut's code is one of the first I've seen do this. You actually require us to evaluate the site and make sure we have enough stacking so we don't back cars up into the street. I believe we came up with a little over 500 feet worth of stacking lane requirements on this site, and we were able to provide it to get people off the street and store all that traffic volume on our site.
I just am afraid that people come also when someone leaves the site, if they want to turn left there, that's just a very dangerous situation trying to get out of that side street and turn left there. To me, that would be a deal breaker. That's not a place that I would go because I wouldn't want to try to get out of there. So that, but like I say, I'm concerned about the traffic there.
Sure.
And that kind of business seems to me would be to be successful, the high volume cars. You need a lot of volume of cars coming in and out of there.
Certainly we've done traffic studies for these in the past in other municipalities. I don't think we're opposed to doing a traffic study there either. what I've learned from doing traffic studies on car washes in other areas is that yes, we're going to have peak traffic volumes of 500 cars a day or in that range. That's over an 8 or 10 hour period. While yes, it does add traffic volume, when you start looking at the design of those intersections, the intersection of that side road isn't too high right now, and it's not going to, when we look at traffic studies, the federal guidelines, we typically grade things from an A to an F. That intersection right now is probably, just guessing, haven't done it, going to rank as an A or a B. I suspect by adding only 500 cars a day to that intersection, it's probably not going to really change that grade level. Certainly we haven't done that traffic study. I'm not saying that's what we will find when we do it, but just doing them in similar situations, I suspect that's probably what we'll come up with.
What is 500 cars a day comparable to? I mean, fast food, or is it comparable to a X number of square feet of office building? Could you put in a reference?
A McDonald's is going to have, 3-4 times that. A sit-down restaurant like this would probably be comparable in traffic volume. If it's open for lunch and dinner, it's probably going to be real close to it. If it's open for breakfast, it'll probably exceed it just a little bit.
Any more questions and comments? Do I have a motion? Or
Noah had made a motion to approve the site plan, subject to the comments.
Ed?
Ed, on your point, and your point too, you mentioned the road that you're talking about had little traffic on it, off of Campbell Station.
The side street.
The side street.
Campbell Station certainly has a large amount of traffic on it, yes.
And if you have to come back and make a left turn on the Campbell Station, you might as well forget it unless you do it at the light. That's
No,
now.
yeah, certainly, and yes, if we did a traffic study there, that would come into play, the backing up from that intersection there. Certainly, South Campbell Station Road has a tremendous amount of traffic on it.
I'm just going to, I agree with what Commissioner Honkin said. We put together a land use plan. The downtown district has been in the plan since, I think it was in the previous land use plan that we had established. So this has been a long time plan, and it's been brought together with the citizens of Farragut. And I feel like, as a commissioner, I can't neglect that, ignore that plan. I feel like I have a responsibility to that plan. And I feel like this doesn't quite fit what we're looking for in that plan.
Okay, we have a motion. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
The
All
motion on the floor is to approve the site plan, subject to the 30 comments.
30 comments. And you've looked at these 30 comments, and they are?
Yeah, certainly some of them, like having a approved notice of coverage from the state of Tennessee for erosion control measures. Been in contact with staff on that. We understand that can't happen in the short amount of time we had now, but certainly before construction that will be addressed. And there's other things like bonding and stuff. All that has to take place before construction begins.
Well, like Mark said before, 30 is kind of a large number for us to approve anything with that many outstanding issues right now. But so, do I have a second?
I did.
Second. Okay. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed?
No.
No. Do we need a vote?
I think Noah was the only one in the affirmative. Is that correct?
I think I'm all by myself.
Okay. I got it.
Moving on to item number 4, discussion and public hearing on a request to rezone villas at Anchor Park subdivision located on the north side of Turkey Creek Road across from Anchor Park, parcel 59, tax map 152, and parcel 001-034, tax map 153 IB, 29.17 acres from R-4 to R-1, OSMR Saddlebrook Properties LLC applicant.
This item was, rezoning was actually approved last month, and it's my fault that it's back here before you because I forgot to include a resolution. And although by state law all that really is required is the action that was taken last month, which it was unanimous, there was no opposition or concerns about the requested rezoning. But our practice has always been to approve an ordinance through a resolution, so that's why it's back before you this evening. I can review the request if you want. I know there were 4 of you who were out last time. Basically, the property is currently zoned attached single family R4, similar to Park Place back here behind us. The request is to go to R1 OSMR, which allows attached and detached. It requires at least 35% open space, so the end result of the rezoning would be less density and a lot more open space. And the character of the type of housing, although this would be all detached structures on this proposal by this particular applicant, the character is still consistent with the land use plan. So the staff recommends approval of Resolution PC-14-05, which recommends approval of Ordinance 14-10.
Offer a motion for approval.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Item number 5 is discussion and public hearing on a concept plan for Briarstone subdivision. This is formerly the Villas at Anchor Park subdivision property, located on the north side of Turkey Creek Road across from Anchor Park, parcel 59, tax map 152, 29.17 acres, Saddlebrook Properties LLC applicant.
Well, this is obviously related to the previous item. This is the Villas at Anchor Park, what was the Villas at Anchor Park property. And as I mentioned last month, in order to proceed with developing the property under a different zoning district, they obviously are going to have to change the concept plan and the preliminary plat and the final plat. The concept plan here before you, basically, I think it has 56 units and 40% open space, so it does satisfy the density and the open space requirements for the R1 OSMR. There's one existing attached building that has been constructed in the development. It's on the south end. It's right there. Very nice building. But the developer, I think, has found that it's going to be more marketable to build detached structures, and the OSMR was a zoning district that would allow the attached building to remain and be compliant with that zoning district, and then allow the developer to build detached dwelling units in the remainder of the development. That hopefully will blend in. I'm sure they will. They build very nice looking houses, so I'm sure it would be very compatible. The comment that was in your packet, that since this is a new concept plan and a new zoning district, staff is recommending that there be a vehicular connection to Audubon Hills. As you may know, Audubon Hills is an older subdivision that has 2 roads that stub out into this particular piece of property. The comprehensive land use plan actually shows connections to both of those roads, but the staff recommends a vehicular connection to either Finch Road or Bobolink, and then a walking trail connection to the other. As you may remember, when our comprehensive plan was updated in December of 2012, one of the items that the consultants brought up, which most of us already knew, is that the town has a lot of these single access entrance subdivisions, and that's a problem for a number of reasons. it can create problems with emergency vehicle response times. It is inefficient in terms of transportation. It can increase traffic time or time of travel. It places more traffic out on collector streets because they have fewer other options, and that makes things like bicycling on collector streets like Turkey Creek Road less desirable as you got more vehicles being dumped out onto those type of streets. And to me personally, the biggest problem with the single access, other than the safety issues, is that it creates kind of a sense of isolation where you have development that's kind of an island by itself, part of a larger community, but it's not connected with the remainder of the community. So to me, it kind of compromises trying to build a larger sense of community in a town. So, those are some of the things that I think are concerns about having a single access. This could be designed to where, you come in perhaps off of Finch Road. I mean, if traffic speed was perceived to be a problem, make a significant turn there. You could also kind of beef up the open space in that area to give you a wide transition between those two different types of development. In fact, in the fire code that we updated as part of the 2012 codes that we updated in 2013, there's a requirement in there that where you have more than 30 dwelling units, you have to provide for a secondary access. So that's kind of the main comment. The other comments are at your places. They're relatively minor, but the staff does strongly encourage that there is a vehicular connection into the property. We have a number of subdivisions that have that and have had it for years. Fox Den, Village Green, Country Manor, all three of those are connected. They have been for a long time, and it's Sequoia Hills in the city of Knoxville is very interconnected. It has a mixture of all kinds of housing types. It even has commercial, schools, and all kinds of things like that. So it's good planning practice to try to connect where it's possible. In this case, it's very possible. You have a road that's stubbed, two roads that are stubbed out into the property. It's consistent with the plan. I know the applicant does not agree with me, but that's okay. But that's the staff's position on this particular concept plan. Other than that, we recommend approval with the subject twos that are at your places.
Hi, I'm Bob Money. I'm the president of Saddlebrook Properties, and we're at 122 Perimeter Park Drive. This site was, as Mark said, was an attached unit that just is not making it. And so what we would like to propose is to come in and reduce the occupancy down to 54 units, which is going to create a lot less traffic, a lot more open space. And more importantly, it's sitting there as a dead project right now. We have not acquired this piece of property, so this is all contingent upon what happens tonight. But what we plan to do on the piece of property is build our product much like we've done with Baldwin Park on Boring Road and the Cove at Turkey Creek. Our market is mostly empty nesters, young professionals for maintenance-free living. And to acquire that buyer, one of the things that they are very concerned about is the safety that they have in their, people buy in maintenance-free communities as empty nesters. They're looking for a place where they can lock it up, leave, their yard is taken care of, and it's a safe environment. This was already approved for 99 units without a connection to the rear property. And we have also met with the fire marshal, and we have plans to create access for the emergency vehicles through the rear of the property in addition to the front entrance, and something that would be aesthetically pleasing. So we handle that. We have connectivity with our walking trails. The greenway goes right alongside this piece of property, but we're very concerned about having added traffic in a community that would be safe, or with our homeowners feeling safe with limited traffic going in and out of it. And since it was already there, we obviously assumed that as we move forward on planning for this, that we would maintain that environment of a lot of security in there. We also are concerned with, if we connected to it, the amount of traffic that could go through a low density subdivision, and the speed at which it could pass through there. So it's a matter of safety and marketability, frankly. You know, we have it is sitting there now in a state that it is not marketable. Obviously, it's been there for a while. We want to continue what we've done in other communities. Hopefully you're familiar with Baldwin Park. We won the beautification award several times. It has one entrance in and one entrance out without connectivity to anything. And so it's very important for us. It is critical for us to have that security and not be connected to a large community of 400 and some lots. Any questions or anything that I can answer for you?
Bob, can you describe what you're talking about with this access for fire trucks and ambulance, how that would work and it wouldn't work for the general public?
Obviously, my engineer's getting nervous behind me, so I'm going to tell you what he's got to say.
Hello, I'm Russ Rackley with Rackley Engineering. I'm at 1908 Cedardale. What we have planned there is to do a typical greenway connection with Town of Farragut, which is 8-foot paving section, but do it rather than a 20-foot easement, a 26-foot easement. The International Fire Code is requires a 26-foot wide emergency access lane. The 9-foot shoulders on either side to equal that 26-foot of width would be, right now what we're looking at is a product called Grass Pave, which was designed specifically to create a grass area that would support large fire apparatus vehicles. And it's essentially a plastic honeycomb device turned on its edge with 8 or 10 inches of stone under it, and then you fill it with dirt and it grows grass and you mow it. So it's, rather than having 26-foot strip of asphalt, it will look like a typical greenway trail with extra bollards or ornamental, partial ornamental gates with still having a 5-foot gap between the bollards for pedestrians, that the fire company can pull the removable bollards if in the event of something occurred that they couldn't get access through the main entrance off of Turkey Creek. They would have a secondary means of ingress and egress. The note that I put on the concept plan is that the structural shoulders of this access are to be approved by the fire marshal. In our meeting with Mr. Johnson, there are several products out there. We're evaluating benefit cost, and obviously ensure that their engineering data will prove that it'll support the 30,000 pound axle loads of the town's biggest or rural metro's biggest truck that they would have out here. So it would appear to be a standard Farragut walking trail with nice mowed grass on the sides, yet that grass is a structural section that will support fire apparatus. This product was designed primarily for commercial sites where they have both the requirement for fire apparatus access to the rear of a multi-story building, but also have a requirement of minimizing runoff area or pervious area. So they are limiting impervious area, so they need more grass area, but yet they have to have a fire lane. So that's where this product was developed.
Any questions?
You know, just out of curiosity, Mark, what's the name of the development that they would connect to again?
Audubon Hills.
It's Audubon Hills.
Have they given any feedback of what their preference would be? Just out of curiosity, are they aware of this?
Not to my knowledge. I mean, those roads have been stubbed out for a long time, so visual intent, I would think, when you look at them is that they would be extended at some point. There's, you know, but I haven't talked with anyone in Audubon Hills. Most of the traffic north to the north there, for the most part, if you're going to Turkey Creek Road, just because of the circuitous nature of the road network, as you go kind of south of Midhurst, which is a road in Kingsgate, most of those folks are going to go out to Red Mill as they do currently. I don't think there's going to be a lot of people that decide to try to meander through the back of Turkey Creek Woods and Audubon Hills to get to Turkey Creek Road when they could go more efficiently down Red Mill. I think people that live in Audubon Hills and the people that live in this development, I think both could have some benefit from it because it gives them more options as far as getting in and out of the development. I think they could, like I said earlier, you could design the roadway maybe to come in off of Finch to give it that curvature to slow people down, although I don't think there's going to be a lot of traffic speed because the road coming into that development is short and, you know, there's really not any way to get a fast speed there. But then to also buffer that area, that transition, so that there is the feeling that you're completely, even though you're connected, you're isolated in a way,
Yeah.
you know, so that you still have that benefit of being connected, but you have also the benefit of that protection through the open space that is afforded in this particular zoning district.
To me, it looks like it would be beneficial to their residents to be able to, for them to cut through, to come out at, you're there at CVS, Walgreens, Ingalls, you're at the west end of Farragut without having to go up to Concord Road or down to
Well,
Virtue.
I think to address your comment earlier, Mark, about part of the comprehensive land use plan in addressing increasing connectivity, mentioned that you do have a lot of neighborhoods that are isolated neighborhoods that so the connecting roads become arteries, like or minor collectors rather, not arterials, but collector streets. To connect this up to Audubon Hills, which is connected to Kingsgate, would still discharge traffic on the same collector street, being Turkey Creek Road, as what their current exit or access is, with the exception of winding through the neighborhood and up and over the ridge and then down to Kingston Pike. I think that most people, and when I lived in Kingsgate years ago, I went out Turkey Creek to Concord anytime I went anywhere because it was a straighter shot, more fluid traffic.
Red Mill.
Yeah, down Red Mill. Yeah, that's
I think
correct.
Red Mill's, I don't think it's going to have that much traffic impact personally.
Well, I think part of the, from my reading of the land use plan earlier today and trying to get to know it a little bit better, you know, one of the primary citizen concerns in the appendices where they listed what is the town's goals was walkable communities and connected communities. And I think that the town has done a fantastic job for many years, I think going back to the 2001 transportation plan, of requiring the greenway trails that do interconnect the neighborhoods, but connect them to promote, you know, an active lifestyle, to promote walking and biking, rather than getting in your car to drive down to Anchor Park to walk by the lake. You would walk down the greenway trail. I think that the greenway trail system around this property and the proposed greenway connections with the development the way that we have it laid out, and being that we have a solution to satisfy the International Fire Code's life safety and fire protection ordinances, that providing this development with a closed end to give the target residents that may be in empty nesters, may be doing a lot of traveling, know that they don't have a lot of people, you know, joyriding around through their house while they're through their neighborhood while they're away. So it's that delicate balance between you know, community. You have your immediate community, you know, your neighbors that you know close, and then you have your bigger community, and then you have your town community. I think that the greenway trails add an extensive amount of interconnectivity, but at more promoted at what we or what I know I personally need to do more, and that's walk or bike rather than drive.
Mark, what he described, would that not meet the fire access road?
I think it would meet the minimum requirements. I know our fire marshal's actually here, Dan Johnson. He might speak to that a little further.
Dan Johnson, fire marshal for the town. If I may answer in two parts. The preference, always, and we discussed this with the applicant, is to provide a road. But to meet the minimum requirements, as stipulated in the fire code, the applicant has provided an alternative that meets the minimum requirements. So that's kind of the short of it. They've come up with some different concepts to do that. They are acceptable concepts. As I said, I would always prefer a big wide road because I have big wide trucks. So,
How long does it take to take one of those bollards out?
and I wanted to clarify that. Someone brought up ambulance access. I don't remember if it was you, Noah, or this would be a concept that would be mainly used in the event that we had a fire condition and we had some added time in the additional apparatus that we were bringing in, because it will take some time, minutes, but minutes count, to remove those bollards and get in there. The reason it allows it in the fire code is because it is an extra access that would not normally be allowed, and because they have found issues with single entrances where, we have, as Mark said, we have several areas in town where all it would take is an incident, tree down, car wreck, something at the entrance or at one part of a existing subdivision, and we don't have any access in there at all until you deal with the initial emergency. This alternative would provide, although, as you asked, it could delay the secondary response into that area, but it is allowed by the adopted code.
I just wanted to add, we're not fixed on, the town requires bollards at the greenway trails, but there are other alternatives. There's what they call squelch activated gates. We could do a gate system, and when I don't mean a big giant jailhouse gate, but more like a small black gate similar to what you see at the national parks or whatever, that's motorized, and when they hit their siren it opens, similar to gates on private roads at gated communities require these systems. So I don't want to get hung up on the bollards, because there's alternatives to preventing the average Joe from driving down it, beyond the fact that all he's going to see is 8 foot of asphalt and grass on either side, which a person may or may not go to drive down that anyway. But I think there's other means of controlling who has access without causing excessive delay in the case of emergency, and we're definitely open to that. And I think that would, assuming that the concept plan is approved as we have it drawn, when we get to the phase 2 preliminary plat, and then we'll have very detailed designs that we'll be working very closely with staff and the fire marshal to make sure that all concerns are met for life safety and fire protection concerns.
Let me tell you what my concern would be if you added more cars into that road. That's a very steep hill, right?
It is relatively steep.
Well, I live on a steep hill, and I can tell you that everybody who passes my house going down the hill is speeding. Nobody's going 25 miles an hour. I've even seen a truck going up the hill at about 60 miles per hour. The fewer people you can have using that road, the better off you're going to be, just from my experience.
Well, obviously, we totally agree. And most importantly, our customers, the people that would turn this into a viable community, they would agree totally, sir.
I have to admit, when I was looking at this initially, I thought that a Finch Road connection would probably be the better of the two, because you don't have, with Bobolink, they are going to come straight down, and it looks like it feeds in and comes straight down. But I hadn't considered what Commissioner Honkin pointed out, the people living on Finch Road and I think that says Bunting, and they have gotten probably pretty accustomed to having a very quiet residential area there because there isn't a lot of through traffic. If you're going there to go to your house. And then all of a sudden we put this connection in and they've got traffic flowing past their houses. And my concern is, I know we want connectivity, but are we protecting these residents that have, that's my concern with opening that road up.
Any other questions or comments?
I guess my comment in reacting to that would be the fact that you always take that, if you're on that property, you know it's there, that can always happen. So I feel a concern, and I would definitely, if I was at it long as at my house, I'd feel the change, but I would have to accept it because I knew better. The second thing would be, I go back to the, thinking about consistency, I go back to the land use plan and what's, I guess, town's basis for wanting that connectivity. But connectivity in that paragraph also talks about the walking trails, the other things. It talks about emergency vehicles and school buses. We're hearing some ideas on how to deal with the emergency vehicles, and for this short subdivision, I think we're in concert, the spirit of what the land use plan has listed relative to connectivity between the walking trails and emergency vehicles and pedestrian traffic. I don't see an inconsistency there, so I think we can look at this objectively that way.
Ed, I agree with you on that point. The connectivity with the walking trails and bike trails and white paths are sufficient for that thing. The one thing you mentioned that caught my attention was school buses, which is a big enough problem as it is.
That was my question too. Is there room for a school bus to go up through there and turn around and come back?
Yes, ma'am. It ends in a cul-de-sac. It ends in a full-size cul-de-sac.
If they would even, I'm not sure how the schools determine which subdivisions they go in or not, but I know as a child in a small subdivision like this, I had to walk down to the entrance because there weren't enough students in the neighborhood to justify the bus turning off that street. And I'm not sure with some of the other neighborhoods down through there how they go about doing that. But there is AASHTO design. I mean, the town's road design standards account for what we call single unit truck turning radiuses. So garbage trucks and UPS and buses can turn around at the back of the neighborhood if they choose to go there.
Just a point of clarity, and maybe this was gone over already. I'm going to go off the road just here for a little bit. Item number 3 you're okay with, I assume?
What was the item?
That's extend the sidewalk that currently terminates at lot 27 so that it connects?
Yes, sir.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure. Thank you.
And you are okay with all 4 of these item number 5 then?
Yes. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, the comment number 1 is the one that we're discussing and would like it approved with that comment not part of the approval.
Are there any citizens here that kind of understand what we're talking about, this connectivity, that would like to share maybe their thoughts? Maybe you don't have to necessarily be in the neighborhood, Audubon Hills, but I'm just kind of curious where other folks, I mean, we do have a lot of cul-de-sac neighborhoods in the town of Farragut, and cul-de-sacs are kind of a way of life in suburbia. But I'm just kind of curious if any citizens have any thoughts one way or another about what we're talking about, having vehicular connectivity between a new subdivision and a mature subdivision.
Would you mind coming up to the microphone? They can't hear you on TV.
Sorry about that. Jason Perry. I live at 564 Lost Tree Lane in the town of Farragut. I think most people, and myself with small children, want cul-de-sacs. We don't want a bunch of cars going through it, 40, 50, 60 miles an hour. So I think the idea for this neighborhood, for this proposal, for it to be cul-de-sacs would be much more appealing for myself and for my young children to be able to ride their bikes in the cul-de-sac. I think for us, I grew up in the town of Farragut. We all lived and played on the cul-de-sac. So you know, that really provides a great opportunity for community. You know, cul-de-sacs are a very important part of any neighborhood and any design in any neighborhood. So I think it's a great idea.
Thank you. Anybody else?
I live on a cul-de-sac. I like seeing the children playing in the street in front of my house. It makes me know there's somebody a lot younger than I am in that neighborhood. And that helps keep me young.
I think Noah and I might come play in your cul-de-sac.
We'll set up a lemonade stand.
You know, the only remaining comment that I would make is, I think in the future when we have situations like this, I'd really like to see us reach out to the adjoining subdivisions to get their input. I think we're missing something there, so I would just offer that as a comment in the future to do that.
Bob, if we included the requirement for the squelch system that your engineer was talking about, which would make that emergency access quicker, it wouldn't be as cumbersome as removing the bollards. How do you feel about that?
Well, we're open to, we want to meet that requirement, no, but frankly, removing the bollards, because that question was asked. Did you design the bollards at Sheffield?
Yeah.
Removing the bollards is a lot faster than opening a gate. The bollards have no mechanical connection, and you actually just take them, pick them up, lay them down. Whereas a gate, you would have to open it up somehow.
Well, the squelch system, you wouldn't have to.
Yeah.
They would never have to get out of their
They
truck
wouldn't
for
have
the
to get out.
squelch system.
So it would be, but the bollards are very easy, but we're receptive. We want
No,
want it to be a safe environment.
If I could interject, at the concept level, I would hate to affix us to a specific solution on the access, given that there may be an even better one that we come up with when we present the Phase 2 preliminary plat with detailed designs. At this point, what the note reads is that whatever we do there, the fire marshal has to approve. And certainly, we want to do what's in the best interest of the community, but we've not explored all possible options, and there may be one out there for in order to restrict access, but yet give fire apparatus quick access that we've not discovered yet because we've not detailed out the design for the second phase. So I think we're on the same page. I would just hate to, at this stage, when it may be a year or two before we come back with Phase 2, and there might be a better product, but yet we have an approval that says we have to use a specific type of gating system. Just my opinion there.
I would say one thing about this design, independent of connecting vehicularly, I think it's a good design because it's got curvature built into it. That's another problem we got with a lot of roads in the town. They're just long straight shots, and that invites lots of problems. So Russ has built into this and a lot of curvature in that northern section, which I think is very good. I hope they keep that. Absolutely.
Any other questions or comments?
I'm going to move for approval with the subject twos.
Second?
Ron, you want to be specific on which subject twos
Yeah,
you're talking
especially
about?
related
Yeah.
All of them.
To number 1 as written?
Yeah, number 1 as written, 2, 3, and 4.
So that would require
That
a
requires
connection.
vehicular
That
access.
require full-blown street through there, Ron.
Oh, I'm sorry, I was reading it wrong then. I thought we were going, I apologize. Thank you for correcting me. I wanted to go with the, well, what was the proper terminology that you had there earlier?
Well, I think because the plan shows a fire apparatus connection subject to the approval of the fire marshal, you could, I believe the motion could be subject to items 2, 3, and 4, and omitting comment number 1, because the plan shows the connection that meets the fire code that we've been discussing. But by eliminating comment number 1 would eliminate the requirement for full-blown road access.
Mark, would that suffice?
I started to say, Mark, is that?
As far as addressing the fire apparatus,
Yes.
There is language on the plan that talks about it has to ultimately be something approved by the fire marshal that he has to be comfortable with.
Are you satisfied with the terminology we're about to do here?
I'm not satisfied with the decision, but I'm
Decision, but-
satisfied with the term.
And we have enough connectability.
Yeah, they've done a very good job with pedestrian connectivity, which is, I commend them on that. That's very important, obviously. Yep, I think that's.
And
Okay.
emergency services. So we can, just a point of clarity, and I apologize, I completely misread that. We could delete number 1 entirely and be okay then, Mark? Is that right?
We're still okay with the fire aspects
Yeah,
of it.
because their plan
Okay.
shows what they're requesting approval of is what's on the screen, and that does show that
Okay.
fire apparatus.
Then I will
Right.
amend my motion to approve with item number 1 stricken and leave items 2, 3, and 4.
I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. We'll move on to item number 6. I guess you guys just stay up here.
But thank you anyway.
Discussion and public hearing on a preliminary plat for Phase 1 of the Briarstone subdivision, formerly Villas at Anchor Park subdivision property, located on the north side of Turkey Creek Road across from Anchor Park. A portion of parcel 59, tax map 152, 9.8 acres, Saddlebrook Properties LLC applicant.
As I mentioned earlier, in order to proceed with developing this property under this new zoning district and new concept, they're going to have to go back and regrade the portion of the former villas at Anchor Park that was, basically ready for construction. It was final platted with, as you see, with the building that's already been constructed there. They padded out all the sites for what would have been the duplexes under the villas. So what they're going to have to do now, and what this preliminary plat addresses, is the regrading that's needed and some utility modifications to provide for the building pads that they would need to accommodate this revision in the concept. So the staff recommends approval of the preliminary plat, subject to there was 9 comments at your places. So
Do applicants have any,
No, he covered it pretty well. They graded, those duplexes had about a 3-foot step in them, so we need to go back and make single-family lots, and there's a handful of either water or sewer service meters that need to be relocated with the new lot lines that we're working with First Utility District on.
so you're okay with the $50,000 letter of credit and all 9
Yeah.
items?
Yep, we're fine with all 9 comments.
Any comments from the commission?
The haul route that is being referred to on item number 6.
Right.
Can you put that up and show us?
yes.
Is that doable? Is that going to work when they're obviously you're trying to rebalance the site?
Well, we're robbing dirt from the back to finish the grading in the front, and I think the concern, and we're aware that we would be crossing an existing greenway trail that was put in by the prior developer that we will have to replace if it's damaged due to our activities. And I think he was making that comment just to make sure that we were aware we're responsible for that greenway trail, and we are.
So yeah, everything up to this point's been constructed. Let's pay for it. So the haul route is basically just a graded out area. It'll have to be provided with a rock or something so that it's not creating the sediment issues. But it does cross the existing asphalt trail section right in here that basically stubs out to that huge specimen tree that's up there at the top of the hill, that basically has a mulched transition from the end of the asphalt trail to the asphalt walking trail in Inverness, which is over to the east there. So and he's got a note on the plan that talks about the fact that the trail will have to be repaired if it's damaged. And just another concern of mine is to make sure that the activity, all the activity stays outside of the drip line of that tree. I mean, that is
It's a gigantic tree.
probably one of the biggest, if not the biggest trees in the town. I mean, it's
That's a couple hundred-year-old
it's
tree.
appears to be in very good condition.
And you guys keep your truck drivers away from that tree?
Yeah, well, we'll have the tree protection fencing around it, and we've already engaged with Curtis Cassiano, who was the arborist that put together the plan to save that tree for the previous development. So he's familiar with the tree. He actually did some work to the tree, some kind of tree doctor stuff to it to help it, and he has a recommendation in that on where that no disturbance zone needs to be. But obviously we're not wanting to harm that tree. That tree is a huge asset. So it's a beautiful tree. I was telling him the other day, you just kind of want to walk up and lay down under it. It's really a nice tree. So.
Yeah, that's probably about the drip line of it there. That's how big it is. I mean,
I'm not sure, to put it in perspective for those at home and in the audience, it's 5 feet in diameter. So it's a gigantic oak tree. So like Mark said, there's not many of those left around
it's
the town.
a real amenity for the project. It really is.
Any other comments from the commission? Being none, have a motion for approval subject to?
I'll make a motion for approval subject to the items.
I'll second.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. I'll turn the gavel back to Madam Chairman.
Discussion and public hearing on the, thank you all very much. We hope we had some action now. Discussion and public hearing on a final plat for Unit 1 of the Split Rail Farm subdivision, parcel 98.01 and 98.02, tax map 141, 35 lots, 37.6 acres, SRF Holdings LLC applicant.
Okay, I think everyone's familiar with this property off Everett Road. They came before you in June with an amendment to the concept plan and the preliminary plat, and since that time, the current developer has been working on trying to address mainly the field items. There's a lot of stuff, and there's still a lot of stuff to do out in the field, but they have been making a good effort at trying to do what they can. They've had some typical summer storms that have set them back a little bit. We've had some really hard rain and some washouts and things. Had we not had those, I think he would have been much further along in the field, but this particular unit includes 26 dwelling units and 9 open space lots. It's the total tract area of the Split Rail Farm subdivision is 50.8 acres, and this will plat 37.5 acres of this. Probably in the next phase, next final plat, there'll probably just be 2, would be my guess, but these areas here be the 2 remaining areas. Pretty much the rest of that is being platted as part of Unit 1. The remaining comments on the plat and the other related items are at your places. There's 8 comments. Probably the biggest thing they have left at this point is just finishing the field work that's needed for the town to be able to sign off on the final plat, so that it can be recorded and they can start selling lots. They've got a lot of stabilization, the walking trails and the homeowner trail, some sidewalk sections, an overhead utility line that needs to be taken down. But Justin Morgan's here, and he has been working on trying to address those. So the staff does recommend approval of the final plat subject to those 8 items, and working with the town as he has been doing on trying to wrap up all the field items.
And you're okay with these 8 items here?
Yes, ma'am. I just would like clarification on item number 1, specifically the permanent stabilization, the 90% rule. I'd like to have some clarification on how we determine what 90% is and what y'all are looking for, so I can plan for that.
Yeah, typically what we do is the areas that were disturbed as part of the construction, you know, at least 90% of those areas have to be, the goal is in a uniform, evenly distributed stand of perennial grass, so that you have a rooted vegetative surface that's coming in. It doesn't have to be a manicured yard by any means, but it has to be, you know, a rooted ground cover that would hold the soil in place, so that you don't, you know, if you have, you know, a heavy rainfall event, that you don't keep losing soil and eroding into your storm sewer system. It's really more to his benefit to get it stabilized in the towns, really, because it's more he has to keep cleaning up. So there's some challenging areas on that property that probably are going to have to be matted for sure. And he is coming into a time of the year where you could probably reasonably get fescue to germinate. It's a little bit early, but with the right mixture, I think as much rain as we've had here lately, that would be possible to try to. I would just try to. Part of the problem is it's too wet to get it graded so that you're ready to apply the grass seed or the matting and all that stuff. So it's tricky, but we can't sign off on the final plat if you have a site that's really kind of unstable, you know, and it's not secured. So, you know, we'll just have to work with Justin in the field, and certainly we'll focus on areas around inlets. We'll focus on buffers around roadways and catch basins and things like that to try to get those shored up first, and then, you know, try to work with him on the more challenging areas. You know, it's some of the areas you could temporarily use something like mulch, or, you know, in a small scale application, but the long-term expectation is that you have a uniform stand of perennial grass. So
They answer your question?
Yeah, well, specifically what I'm kind of leaning towards is, because of some of those challenging areas, if not to actually get sign off, that if I did show that we have made every effort to stabilize and actually did something that would keep from the erosion control problems happening, if we had it where we could get acceptance and maintain our erosion control bond, which we've already posted and renewed even for an additional amount of time, so you knew that we would maintain that we could actually, because we may have some areas that are going to be very challenging to have 90% grass growing, which kind of worries me that, you know, that could take months when we'd have everything else done. So if we could have some type of agreement of what you all would consider stabilized enough to allow it to sign off once all the other items are done, that way I have something to shoot for, specifically on those challenging areas, would just make it helpful so I can continue to move forward with the project.
Well, I think on the problem areas, sometimes you know, the main thing is you want to get some kind of cover over the soil, because when the rainfall hits the soil, it suspends the soil and it erodes away. So somehow on the problem areas that could take a while, you may need to do some kind of you know, mulch, light layer of mulch application or something temporarily, you know, until it dries out a little bit.
Specifically, two of the things I'm thinking of that are the two worst lots are up on the far northwest. There's almost like a solid acre of grass. I've already hydroseeded it twice, and with a binder, and it continues to wash off. And so I'm trying to think of a way we can. That's an acre is a big piece of property not to have fully stabilized, but I don't want those two lots, which will eventually be built on, to hold me back from getting a final signature.
You talking about this area right in here?
Yeah, right where we input that. We installed that 24-inch pipe.
Yeah.
And the original developer benched that off, so it's solid clay. So
yeah, that's a
way
problem
to
area.
stabilize that, which I think is probably the worst place in the subdivision.
Yes, it is.
So if I could find a way that we could have an agreement to what you all would accept, to not hold me back on that 90% rule, that would let you all know that I'm also still trying to make sure that because I think that'll probably take 2 or 3 more hydroseedings in about 6 to 9 months, realistically, topsoil it, hydroseed it probably 2 more times, which will take quite a bit, and I'd prefer not to wait that long to get final signature.
I'm gonna throw something out. I've actually had a lot better success out of grass mat. Having a little bit of, obviously, if it's red clay, you're not gonna get anything to grow on it.
Yeah.
But with some topsoil, even though grass mat is probably a little more labor intensive, I'm not sure it's necessarily any more expensive than hydroseeding unless you happen to own the hydroseeder. But if you'd had grass mat, and then the other recommendation that I could do is maybe put in like a 20% mixture of annual rye, and that annual rye will come right up.
Before the matting?
Yeah, we'll do.
Rye.
Obviously, you want to see before the matting with your. I assume you're putting down Kentucky 31, as well as annual rye. But annual rye will pop right up. Now
Yeah,
it will die.
Yeah.
So, but you don't want to put a lot into it. But if you want to get a quick stabilization, and then the grass mat, usually you can buy the grass mat in 9-10 foot wide rolls, and you just kind of unroll it and staple it down. And it protects it from the birds eating the grass seed. It retains the moisture, and I've done a lot of hydroseeding and grass mat, and I've always been disappointed with the hydroseeding. And I've always had good success out of the grass mat. And the grass mat, historically, has kept the town pretty happy, and it maintains erosion control.
We did do we did already hydroseed it once, and we did use 25% rye, and maybe 10% of it took. And then, so if we hydroseeded it with a mix that was acceptable and then matted over top of it, would that be considered?
Well, that area there is not a good candidate for hydroseeding.
Okay.
It's too steep.
It's too steep.
First of all, you got to you need to get with engineering, and you need to get the water directed away from it, because that's the problem.
Well, we actually have fixed that issue, because we did finish that pipe, and we did a full ditch line system with eco matting underneath it, and riprap the entire area. So I think I fixed the washout area. I'm specifically talking about the benched area where the 2 lots have been benched out, and it's just literally a solid acre of, it's 2 half-acre lots of clay. That's where it kind of slopes down, benches off, and slopes down again. I think I've corrected the washout issue, and I can use mulch and hydroseeding along the trail, which we've discussed before. I'm more worried about an acre of solid dirt that's flat benched out that would take away from that 90%. That's what I'm talking about.
Yeah, the red clay is a problem.
That's what I'm thinking. I mean, do you still have a stockpile of topsoil out there that you can move around?
It's all gone.
It's all gone?
I'm more than willing to bring it in, as long as...
It doesn't take much. I mean, you put an inch down there. I mean, typically sod's only going to have an inch. So, but you put an inch down and then and seed it. Personally, I think that hydroseeding is an overkill, but if you seed it and then straw mat it, assuming you're not having one area that is washing out, if it's just sheet flowing, I think you'd have pretty good success with that. And I think that does a pretty good job. Again, I'm not sure if anybody from engineering is here to share with that some of their experience in stabilization, but a grass mat goes a long way because it has all that straw embedded in that little matting, and then over time that mat just kind of disintegrates.
Well, I guess my specific question is, would you all consider that stabilized to sign off?
Well, that's something you need to work with our engineering staff on. They can't make that determination. We just have to be consistent with how we treat everybody, and our expectation is that and you have been working on it as you can. You've had some challenging weather here lately, but we'll just have to look at, most of the site. I was up there just a couple of days ago. A lot of it looks very good. I mean, there's just problem areas, and you know what they are. We'll just have to work together on trying to figure out the best approach to dealing with those. It's hard to answer that right now. It could be a 3 or 4 stage process on some of those, because you kind of inherited a major problem in that area.
Yes, sir.
Any more questions and comments?
Have you guys, going to note 2, finalizing the Everett Road cost share agreement, have you guys finalized that?
Yeah, I think we've been working with Mr. Hale. We've gotten that pretty much taken care of, and I believe our understanding was we were going to sign that along with everything all at once, posting the bond, sign the agreement, do everything all at one time. And every other item I'm fine with. We will take care of those.
I'd like to make a motion to approve with the subject twos as listed.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you and good luck.
Thank you very much.
Discussion and public hearing on amendment to the text of the Farragut zoning ordinance, Chapter 3, Section 11, multifamily residential district R-6 to replace it with a new requirement. Ross Bradley TDK Construction and PMG applicants.
Okay, this item has been discussed at the previous 3 planning commission meetings. As you know, at last month's meeting, the staff had presented a draft amendment to the existing R6 zoning district, and we received some input on that amendment from the applicants and the commission, and we tried to address those comments, and those are reflected in what we're proposing as ordinance 14-11. It's pretty, the changes that were made were pretty minor. If there's any specific questions about anything, I'd be happy to try to answer that. I know some of you all were not here last time, but there seemed to be a general, acceptance to the draft for the most part. I mean, other than some comments that we tried to address, but certainly it's back before you for further consideration. So if anybody has any specific questions, I'll be happy to try to answer those.
I have a particular question. Let's see, it's item on the item paragraph 6. E. Reads, the maximum coverage of the total building areas will not exceed 35%, and local lot coverage shall not exceed 60% of what?
You're talking about
impervious surface.
Section
oh yeah, that's dealing with that hasn't really changed from our existing
Yeah, I know had
wording.
Still,
Yeah, that's for schools and churches that may want to
just
develop in R6. Yeah. What that's talking about is the building area, the building coverage, basically anything that has a roof on it on that particular piece of property as part of that type of development cannot exceed 35% of the total land area.
Okay, if it says that someplace in there, it's
then the total coverage can't be more than 60%. So that would be buildings plus parking lot, access, sidewalks, anything that's basically not green and growing could not be more than 60% for those type of uses.
I think my only concern and is still with the buffer for the abutting a agricultural or residential, because I know that we've reduced it to 35 feet if they don't have a parking lot there, but looking at 35 feet, that seems very narrow to me. I'm not sure if anyone else agrees with that. Maybe not.
Mark, when you have that 35 feet, should a residential section or even commercial section be developed connecting to it, how much of a buffer strip do they have? So we're not just talking.
Would they provide
setback?
Right.
Well, it would depend on what type of residential zoning district is surrounding them. So a lot of them wouldn't require any kind of buffer strip. But if it was like R3, like Bob Money was talking about earlier, the small lot, that would be required a 25-foot buffer. Like Chapel Glen off Fretz Road is R3. So in effect, you would have, a pretty wide buffer if you had a situation like that. Like the Chapel Point and some of the attached single family, they're required to have a 25-foot buffer. So they have a 25-foot buffer. Then you have at least a 35-foot buffer for the R6, potentially 50 if the parking lot is proposed to be on the periphery.
So you would actually, in something like that, have 70 feet between the two of them,
Potentially,
potentially.
yeah.
But there could be situations where you would only have the 35.
That's correct, yep. If they chose to put the buildings on the periphery. We talked about at some of the previous meetings that a lot of the, I don't know if I'd call them nuisance concerns, but a lot of the noise and lighting and conversation and that kind of stuff happens in parking lots. And so if we could build in some incentive in the ordinance to encourage a developer to orient the buildings on the periphery, then that would be something we would try to steer them toward. And that's why that particular relaxation in the current buffer is in this ordinance, is to try to encourage that kind of layout instead of having the parking on the periphery. If the parking's on the periphery, then the buffer and the setbacks, actually the setbacks are actually greater for parking under the proposed ordinance if they have it on the periphery. But both of those would have to be 50 feet if the parking's on the outer portion of the development.
Any other questions or comments? Yes, come up to the microphone, please, and tell us who you are and where you live. Or give us an address.
Jeannie Drawn. I live at 650 Chapel Point Lane, which is adjacent to the property that is under proposal for development of an apartment complex. I recognize that my comments may be premature, but I was at the last Planning Commission meeting when Mr. Bradley and company were proposing modifications to the R6 zoning. Now, I don't know that much about how the zoning issues work, but I do know that if the R6 zoning modifications that you all are considering are approved, that the developer will come back and ask that this property be rezoned from R4 to R6. And I want to voice my opposition to that happening. We don't need an apartment complex on that property. There's an apartment complex less than a block away, Lanesboro. I don't know if you remember, but a few years ago, you denied rezoning of that particular property, excuse me, on the basis of the traffic issue on Grigsby Chapel Road. The Wyndham Hall homeowners spoke in opposition of the rezoning as well, and some of the Farragut Commons people did, based on the increased traffic. And since that time, the traffic has increased very much, as you probably all know. And I kind of shudder to think what would happen to the traffic on Grigsby Chapel if a 200-unit apartment complex was approved for that particular property. So I just wanted you all to know that I'll probably be back, and I'll probably be expressing my opposition to any rezoning that you may have under consideration at any time. Thank you.
Thank you for coming. Anyone else? If you'll line up there.
Good evening. My name is Mull, M-U-L, Wyman, W-Y-M-A-N. I reside at 528 Wyndham Hall Lane, Wyndham Hall subdivision. Full disclosure, my comments tonight, I do not represent the Wyndham Hall homeowners. Okay, I have two questions for you on the proposed amendments to the existing R6 zone. In the handout, in the packet that you received, proposed changes in red, blue, and green. Text in green reflects changes from July FMPC meeting. That's where I'm starting. Not the whole thing, just 2 areas. If you have that in your packet, it would be after the ordinance, which is, I can't remember that ordinance number, but anyhow. One of the things that was changed, and this would be paragraph number C, be the second page. It's item number C3, which has been redlined. All blue line streams must remain in their natural state and shall not be piped except for access crossings. All building structures, driveways, parking lots, and other similar improvements must be set back a minimum of 10 feet from the top of the stream banks. Question for Mark, is this appear elsewhere, Mark, or?
Well, this was taken out because it's not consistent with our current requirements. It's actually a lower standard than what we currently have. So, and we have other language in the draft that basically says that the development has to meet any applicable requirements of the town, like our aquatic buffer ordinance, for example, the stormwater ordinance.
Yeah, I was particularly concerned about that because the access to the property, of course, is from one access is from Grisby Chapel, and another access could be Campbell Lakes Drive. But as you all know, in order to get into the property from Campbell Lakes Drive, you have to go across the tributary to Turkey Creek. There's floodplain in there and wetlands and so forth. So we're talking about, all those, whatever those permits are, would be necessary for that. The other item that I had is, I believe it's on the, let me see. Yeah, on the last page. Now it doesn't show in your packet, but in the, I believe it was for the July meeting, it doesn't show up. Item I said a landscape plan per the requirements of Chapter 4 of this ordinance. But that was eliminated from the package that you were sent for this meeting. And again, I just wanted to ask Mark about that.
That's because it's addressed under Section C11.
Okay.
And it was repetitious. So
all right.
Didn't need it.
And needless to say, we're very concerned about the impact of this development on that whole area, really. And I know these remarks are really premature, but when we get to that, of course, that'll be at the next meeting or whenever that comes up, the rezoning. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Anyone else? I think we have one more person who's
deciding.
Yeah, deciding. Are you going to?
Sir, are you going to come forward and make a comment, or?
Yes, my name is Michael Sims. I live at 439 Wyndham Hall Lane, and we've lived in Wyndham Hall for about 17 years, and I just became aware of what's going on on this property, and I guess I'm here to ask, how can I obtain up-to-date information about what's happening? If I can get that here, or somebody can mail it to me. I really feel very poorly informed about what's going on. I would love to know more. And I think I speak for some of the neighbors who also don't really know what's going on. So how could we get that information?
Well, everything that we have that's been submitted to the town, we put on our website. It's in the packet. Everything that's presented to them is available to the public, and we can certainly also get you a copy, but it is on our website. It's under in the Planning Commission section. They have their agendas in there, and the full packet is on there with the staff recommendations. We haven't received any concept drawings or anything. We've just been working on the text of the zoning ordinance thus far. So we don't have any drawings of anything. I think the the gentleman that's interested in possibly developing the property is here. He could probably try to answer maybe some general comments or questions that you may have, but we don't have anything that's been submitted to us that I could show you. But certainly when that does occur, we are very open with our records, and anyone
Okay,
can come by and look at those.
Yeah, I know that other people as well as myself, one of our first concerns deals with traffic. Do you know if studies have been done with respect to what would happen to traffic on Grigsby Chapel? Because it's not ideal now, and I'm just wondering what...
That would be required.
Okay, so that's forthcoming.
It would be required, a traffic impact study.
Okay, thank you.
And you can give him the website name, Mark.
Townoffarragut.org. If you go under government, there's a listing of the different committees there, and they just go under the Planning Commission, and pretty much anything that comes before them is there.
I'm Beth Sells, and I live at 680 Chapel Point Lane. I've lived there about 2 years, and I moved from a place just a mile west of there. So I've been dealing with Grigsby Chapel traffic for a good number of years, and I was just quite honestly just floored that putting 200 units on Grigsby Chapel is a consideration. I guess you have to do that because maybe somebody has a plan, but if you live off of Grigsby Chapel, you would know what I'm talking about. Traffic is bad already, and even considering 200 units just seems to me ridiculous. So, thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else?
Yes, my name is Mark Skrock. That's S-C-R-O-C-K. I live at 400 Wyndham Hall Lane. I've been there for about 18 years. Even though the information that the folks in Wyndham Hall have gotten is extremely sketchy, and again, I'm speaking just for myself. I do not represent the Homeowners Association. I'm not on their board or anything. At this point, I have been 2 terms, and that was plenty. If you've ever been there, you know it's a great place to live. Several concerns that we would have would be, number one, a density issue. The information we have is that they're going to put about 200 units up there, and that breaks down into 8 multi-level, multi-unit, multi-living unit facilities per acre. Now, depending on your point of view, an acre really isn't that big. It's about 70% of a football field, 70 yards by 70 yards, and you want to put 8 units that are multi-level and multi-family living units per acre. You're not going to have room for anything else, even though some of them have garages. I don't see where there's any room for any parking. There's going to be no green area. You just don't have enough space in an acre to put all the units that they want. So I think there's a density problem there. If it would be approved, I think something maybe in half that number of units per acre would be more considered to be considered. We're also led to believe that the units are going to be anywhere from 750 square feet to 1,450 square feet. That really goes, and they're all going to be rental or lease units. These folks, regardless of what they say, they're going to check the backgrounds and all that kind of stuff. These folks don't have any skin in the game. They're going to be moving in and out, and that's going to just cause problems. The other folks have already issued their concerns about the traffic. If you've been on Grigsby Chapel Road from 7:20 in the morning to 8 o'clock, it is backed up, totally stopped from the light at Walgreens there all the way back to where you enter into St. John Newman School. And it's not quite as bad in the afternoon, but for about a half hour, 45 minutes, it's just totally backed up and totally stopped. And to dump additional traffic there, directly on a Grigsby Chapel, I think is going to be basically impossible to do. And if you came out at Fetz Road, you'd have to put a light or something there, and you're just going to be dumping all those people in an already overly congested area. And without taking our beloved center aisles out, you're not going to expand that road anywhere. And I don't really mind the aisles. I think that now that we finally got the landscaping down right, they really look pretty nice. But there's really no room to expand the road without going through some major expense. I also understand that there might be another back way if you can go behind the property and come out where the BP is, right on Campbell Station Road. I'll leave you folks to handle the traffic nightmare that's going to be if you have 200 people wanting to come out and try to get on Grigsby Chapel Road from the rear end of that development. So I thank you for giving me the chance to voice my concerns.
Thank you. May we have someone else?
I am Jewel Stallions, and I live in Wyndham Hall. I live on Channing Lane, and I just want to add to what Mark said, that in addition to the traffic problem, there's a bus stop. And every morning at 7:10, there's about 6 or 8 cars of mothers letting children out to go to the bus stop. And they run back and forth to the cars and run back to kiss mom. And so coming out of there is just really difficult. Adding 200 more residents is just something you really need to consider.
Thank you.
I'm Ross Bradley, TDK Construction, 1610 South Church Street. I might be the most popular guy in the room tonight. Thank you guys for coming out. I don't want to take away, tonight's really not the night to talk about this project, and so I don't want to take away this time, but I do want to respond to a couple of those statements that were made. We are in the process still of trying to determine how we're going to design this project. This ordinance change tonight will give us some basis for how we go about doing that. I would like to, if you feel open to do it, get your name and your contact information so we can reach out to you. Our intentions are, once we figure out what this ordinance is going to look like, to actually continue our design process, our architectural renderings, and sit down with you guys and have some neighborhood meetings. And I think that's only appropriate we do that in any municipality that we're in. I'm a local Maryville guy. I grew up in Maryville, and so my family all lives here. My mom's in education here. My dad retired from the state and still lives here. I've got a lot of family here, so I know that I know what it's like to have pride in a community. And so I want to make sure that we sit down with you guys and talk through this process. And we'll do the studies, we'll do the traffic studies. I think traffic's the #1 issue that everybody's got. And so we're going to take the time to do that. I just want to reassure everybody that we want to make this an open discussion. I'll have my business cards back there. It's got my personal cell phone. You're welcome to call me. I get calls sometimes 8, 9 o'clock at night. People think of something and call me. You're welcome to do so. I'll get all your information if you're willing to share it with me, and I'll continue to share information with you throughout this process. So, thanks.
He has commented to us several times, hasn't he, Mark, that he will meet with the neighborhoods?
Yes.
We have any more questions or comments from the Planning Commission?
I'm going to make a motion to approve.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Discussion and public hearing on amendment to the text of the Farragut zoning ordinance, Chapter 3, specific district regulations to create a new zoning district, open space, multifamily residential overlay district. Ross Bradley, TKD Construction, and PMG applicant.
This is obviously very related to the previous item, but as part of the discussions we've had at the previous meetings, the feeling was that the R6, the multifamily provisions, needed to be really addressed in 2 separate options. The first was the traditional R6 and amendments to that, which we just approved. And then the other option would be for properties that have a lot of significant environmental challenges, lots of steep slopes, floodplains, wetlands, things that would be really impossible to develop and certainly not cheaply. So what we did, from all those discussions was created last month a draft zoning district and a completely new zoning district for open space multifamily residential. It's kind of patterned after the OSR and OSMR that have been very successful in the town, and that we had a applicant rezone property to earlier. So this particular zoning district has some a little bit more liberal allocation of height, and in some cases a little less setback requirements. The density still the same, 12 units per acre. But the big thing is that 50% of the tract has to be in permanent open space, and that's huge. I mean, completely undisturbed, half the site. That's what's basically contained in the open space multifamily residential overlay, and that's reflected in Ordinance 14-12. The changes per the last Planning Commission meeting were included in the packet. A lot of those were really just clarifications. Some of the stuff, just going back through and reading it again, I made some changes, just trying to tweak some things. I'm kind of a little bit anal about things sometimes, which may or may not be good, but those changes are in green there. I don't know if anybody has any questions. We got some feedback from the applicants last month, and we also modified for both the ordinances the architectural design requirements. We reached out to our the folks that are working on the architectural design standards for the town, and they helped us with the language that's in actually both of these proposed zoning districts, and we feel very good about that language and that it would be consistent with whatever happens with the architectural design standards. If you have any specific questions, I'll be happy to try to answer those.
Anyone have any questions? Anyone in the audience? I'd like to say that we may not have any questions now, but we have gone over this with a fine-tooth comb for many months now.
Several meetings.
Yeah.
Mull Wyman, 528 Wyndham Hall Lane, Wyndham Home subdivision. My concern is height. You talked a little bit about buffers. Let's talk about height. Let's talk about Lanesboro on Fretz Road, okay? Lanesboro's 2 stories. To the north of Lanesboro is what? Chapel Glen. To the south is townhouses. 3 stories next to residential just isn't going to do it. It needs to be no more than 2 feet next to residential.
2 stories.
Single family. 2 stories, right. 3 stories is way too high. Way too high. It says, whenever the adjacent property is zoned residential or agricultural, no building to be constructed within 100 feet of a periphery property line. Okay? Periphery property line, this point is Chapel Point. Just think about that. 3 stories a 3-story apartment building right next to Chapel Point. Think about that, and then think about Lanesboro, which is interesting from a zoning standpoint because you've got apartments right there at Lanesboro, and right above it, what did they do? They came in with single family later on, much later on. Just think about a 3-story building right next to Chapel Point, and then think about Lanesboro. Lanesboro, you know, graphically is a pretty good transition. So,
Mark, you want to explain that?
Well, I mean, it's true, Lanesboro's 2-story. When we went on our bus tour, we did look at some 3-story. I think the Greystone Summit, which was a very nice development, was 3-story. And it does have more visual impact, 2 versus 3-story, and I think there's exponentially more visual impact when you go to 4-story from what we've seen on the tour and just, you know, and looking at other projects. But again, the reason that and I mentioned earlier, there is a more liberal height
right.
allocation for this zoning district because the developer is donating basically or setting aside half the property as permanent open space. So what we were trying to do is build some incentives to protect those environmentally sensitive areas and allow the developer to have enough flexibility to make the project work on the land that they were going to develop. So that's the reason why there's a height difference between those 2 zoning districts.
3 stories, 4 stories. The closer you get to I-40, okay, you know, you can have 3 stories, maybe even 4 stories. Closer you get to Campbell Lakes, if you can get across the floodplain and the wetlands and the creek, you know, it's next to commercial. But folks, not 3 stories next to Chapel Point. It doesn't make any sense. I understand the open space multifamily overlay. Thank you very much.
Jason Perry, 564 Lost Tree Lane in Farragut. One comment I would like to make for everybody in the room is that the commission itself for the last, I guess we've been at this for the last 4 months, has done an excellent job protecting the integrity of the town of Farragut. I personally live here. I live in the town. My children go to St. John Newman. I'm very aware of the traffic count of what St. John Newman is and what goes on in Grisby Chapel Road every morning. But what the commissioners are trying to do at this point is come up with a zoning that fits what you have and what you're looking at with TDK Construction and PMG. You actually have 2 different properties. So one property is obviously located next to some of your all's neighborhoods, and in our instance, ours is located closer to the interstate. So you kind of what they're trying to do is trying to figure out a way in a zoning ordinance that's going to fit everybody. You know, you kind of have to, for lack of a better term, you have to kind of have a one-size-fits-all. So what the town of Farragut and what the commissioners have done and what we've taken examples from around the southeast in towns like Chapel Hill, North Carolina, Boone, North Carolina, Asheville, North Carolina, Greenville, South Carolina. It's taken those examples and said, okay, what's worked for these towns to allow a certain amount of growth? Because we've seen over the last, since 2008, in the downturn, we've seen a strong, steady demand for high-class multifamily. And the reason for that is simple, because a lot of folks these days, in this time and days, cannot afford houses. They can't afford the down payment. They have to get, to save 20%. So therefore, we see strong demand for multifamily housing, and the same thing for the town of Farragut. So what you're seeing is a reaction by the county, by the commission here in the town of Farragut, and by developers such as ourselves and TDK to fill a demand and a need for folks for housing. If there wasn't a demand or need inside the town of Farragut for multifamily housing, neither one of us would be here to develop multifamily housing. But as far as tonight goes, and I think a lot of your concerns are usually delineated under when it comes down to a site plan approval, each individual site each one of us will take our turn and blame, okay, here's our design, here's how many stories the buildings are, here's what the layout, how much vegetation we have, and those types of things will be delineated, 60, 90 days from now. But tonight, you know, the focus of what we're trying to do is try to find a overall zoning and overlay zoning that will encompass the entire town of Farragut for all multifamily development, not just one district or one site. Thank you.
You know, I want to thank you for making those comments, because what I worry about with the folks that have spoke up tonight, and first of all, I really genuinely mean it. Thanks for coming. Because the worst thing that happens is we make decisions here, we receive no feedback from the people it's going to affect, and then we're trying to backpedal later. So I do appreciate you coming here. You know, we're not voting on a specific piece of property tonight, and I think some of you know that, maybe all of you know that, but I wanted to make that point of clarity. This has been kind of an interesting meeting. You know, we've had a piece of property that we talked about earlier off of Everett Road that during my time on the Planning Commission, I think it's involved. We're on our third iteration of that. We've had 3 different looks on how that property was going to be. And sometimes people bring ideas to us and we say, well, okay, if this was to happen, how do we want it to look? And that's really where we're at tonight, is we're still, we've been massaging this idea on a concept, not necessarily laid onto a specific piece of property. We are not to that point yet. We had another site plan, which you saw earlier, that the whole concept has changed. And the item number 11 here goes back to a conversation that we had, I think, in 2007 for the Town Center District, where we spent a minimum of 6 months talking about all the what ifs and maybes, and we got down into the minutia of that zone. And now we're revisiting that tonight. And there's a classic example of a lot of discussion taking place, but yet that particular zone has gone nowhere because the economy changed. There's a variety of issues that come into play. But as one of the developers stated, you know, what we're doing tonight is really laying the ground rules if this was to happen. And then they ultimately have to determine if, I mean, to really cut to the chase, if they can make money within those ground rules. So, you know, we will decide later the merits of each individual piece of property. Your concerns are all valid, but I don't want anybody to sit here, because probably the most disturbing comment that I ever heard in a public meeting within the town of Farragut was somebody said, well, I can tell you the fix is in. And I don't want anybody to leave here tonight because we've approved this new zoning and you're going, well, it's already a done deal for the property. That's a whole different vote that has to take place. And you know, one thing that I'm most proud of as a member of this board and as a member of the Board of Mayor and Aldermen, but most importantly as a citizen, is things are done above board and we have open discussion. There's no backdoor meetings, and everything is there for everybody to take a look at. So I think it's important that you know that I really appreciate your comments of clarity, because these things are done in steps and everybody needs to understand what each vote means. This is not a blanket where we're approving a project tonight. So I just felt the need to make that clarity. Yes.
Do I need to give my name and address again?
Just give us your name again.
Okay, Beth Sells. I want to clarify something he said, because it's my understanding that he was talking about virtually, even though it may be different ownership, the same plot of ground,
No.
which continues across the greenway. Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, well, that helps me, because I thought I knew it could be another owner, but if it's the same plot that goes back to the interstate, that's still adjoining Chapel Point. Oh, okay, thank you. But I am concerned about the possibility of 3 to 4 stories when I live in an area that's 2-story. But I can tell you from, and you know, I appreciate the town of Farragut looks great. That's why I want to live there. And we've had good, strong restrictions up to this point, and that's why it looks so good. And I hate to see us beginning to open things up too liberally and we change the way Farragut looks. I have the opportunity now, because of family, to visit Hilton Head and Williamsburg. And those are 2 places we all like to visit. And part of it is there's restrictions on how much green space you have. You know, it looks really pretty. And so I hope Farragut will continue the good job you've been doing as far as keeping our town beautiful.
Thank you. We appreciate you coming to say this.
Jeannie Drawn again. I want to thank Mr. Honkin for his comments. I really appreciate what he said, and you have clarified something for me anyway. When I said I thought my comments might be premature, I recognized that what you all were considering tonight were modifications, changes to the current R6 zoning, not just for that piece of property, but for any other parcels in the town of Farragut that might be suitable for development in a multifamily process. So even though they were premature, I think that we and the residents in Wyndham Hall who spoke have gotten the point across that we are opposed to the change in the zoning of this particular piece of property. And I thank you for clarifying, too, that there is another piece of property in the town of Farragut that is currently being proposed for an apartment complex. Is that right? And certainly, any changes, any modifications to the R6 zoning is going to benefit them as well. Thanks.
Mark, can you give us a little overview of when a zoning change is requested, what people can look for to be aware of that?
Yeah, we'll put a sign out at the, at the entrance to the subdivision, at the entrance or the area that's where the some actions are being taken on it. So, for example, if a sign appears on the property, you all are referencing, then that means that there's going to be action coming to the Planning Commission regarding that piece of property. And then we also send out notifications in writing to everyone that abuts the property in question, so that they get a notification of the specifics about what's being requested, what the like it's zoned this, it's being requested to be rezoned to this, and it would include a map that shows the area that is being requested for the rezoning, and then of course our contact information should you have any additional questions or comments. So it's a very open and public process, but
it will also include the meeting time of the does it include
yes,
the meeting
it does,
time?
yeah.
Does the sign also indicate what it is currently zoned to and what it's going
What
to
the
be?
sign currently says is just that there's action being taken on regarding this property, and please contact the town of Farragut for further information, something like that. We just kind of kept it generic, but
So it could be used again and again.
yeah. Some of them have gotten stolen over the years, probably in somebody's dorm room somewhere. But anyway.
And again, anytime you see that, you can come to the town's website and get more detailed information.
And you can call or email me, and I can, like I said earlier, we are very open with anything that gets submitted to us. It's submitted to the public as far as we're concerned. So, we're more than welcome to share what's being requested and try to answer any questions you may have. So, it probably will be something that will be coming up in the next few months, to maybe next month for one of them, and the month after for the other, possibly.
Any more questions or comments? Do I have an?
I move for approval of resolution PC 1407, creating the overlay districts, open space.
I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Moving on to item number 10, discussion and public hearing on an amendment to the text of the Farragut zoning ordinance, Chapter 4, Section 20, parking and loading, A, 2, and 3, to change the off-street parking provisions for multifamily uses. Ross Bradley, TKD Construction, and PMG applicants.
Well, this is obviously related to the previous two items. As we've talked about at our previous meetings, the parking space allocations that the town has had since we created the R6 zoning district are currently 2.25 parking spaces per dwelling unit, and based on the feedback we've received from the folks that build apartments throughout the region, and is kind of looking at what's going on in Knox County, city of Knoxville, and some places around us, we felt that ratio was too high, and so we are proposing as part of this text amendment, and that is reflected in Ordinance 14-13, to modify the parking space allocations for apartments and multifamily to go from 2.25 to 1.75 units per acre, or unit spaces per unit. This is just a minimum. They could go more than that. And what it does is it provides for the opportunity to have less, hard surface and more open space and green area if the applicant so chooses to do that. So, and that could perhaps lessen the impact on adjoining, residential developments. And then the second element of what we're trying to change in Chapter 4 deals with the parking lot setbacks, and just cleaning up some language in there to make it consistent with the setback provisions that we've created in these two zoning districts. It's a less of a setback requirement in the current wording in the zoning ordinance than what's in the two zoning districts that you've reviewed prior to this. So with that clarification, staff recommends approval of Resolution PC-14-08.
Any questions?
I'll move for approval.
Second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Item number 11, discussion on the amendment to the text of the Farragut zoning ordinance, Chapter 3, Section 27, Town Center District, TCD. And is this one for discussion only tonight, Mark?
Yes, this is just discussion now. Do you all need to take a break first? Or I don't know how long we'll be talking about this. It's whatever you want.
Till tomorrow at 8 o'clock.
Is it till tomorrow?
I guess we're ready to keep going.
It's up to you all.
Come down to your place and work out, right?
Okay.
Make it.
All right.
Okay.
Yep. Well, this item obviously relates back kind of to the first item we looked at earlier in the meeting, and kind of moving forward and trying to discuss amendments to the town center district and or other zoning districts that would help get the process in motion for trying to bring about a downtown, to try to get some provisions in place that would address parcels like the one that the car wash was proposed on, and others in what was identified as that mixed-use town center and the comprehensive plan. We discussed a lot of this last week, but some of y'all were not able to make the workshop session. But just to kind of give you a brief overview, for those of you that weren't able to make that, as we've talked about earlier, the concept of having a downtown is nothing new. It was in our previous land use plan. It's been something that's been a desire of the town for many, many years, and that continued with the comprehensive plan update in 2012. The issue that we're having right now is that as far as existing zoning districts that we have, the closest thing to the development of a mixed-use town center is the town center district that we have adopted in our zoning ordinance. The issue with that is, and it's a very well-written document, but it was really written for the development of a new downtown on a relatively large piece of property and on a vacant tract for the most part. And what we need to try to think about are these parcels like the Silver Spoon and others in the mixed-use town center area that are candidates for redevelopment. they could be just kind of, small steps toward incrementally working toward the development of a larger downtown. It was acknowledged when Winston and Associates was working on our comprehensive plan that bringing about this downtown is going to take a long time. It's going to take a lot of hard work, and it's going to probably be completed incrementally, parcel by parcel. So
a lot of money.
And a lot of money, yeah. What we're trying to do at this point is to move forward with trying to blend what the comprehensive plan provides for as far as this mixed-use town center area with the requirements of the town that are reflected in our zoning ordinance. When we talked about this last week, there were a number of options. Let me just pull up I'll just kind of I'm not really going to go through some of this because it's things that you all would already know. Let me just get right to yeah, here we go. There were some actions that we could that we suggested that could be considered to try to move forward on bringing about a downtown. That lower slide there was what was presented last week. We talked about all those different options, and it doesn't mean that you can't do more than one of these. In fact, you maybe ought to. But we talked about timing. We talked about how it, what the process could be. Some things that the legal aspects. And it seemed to me from the feedback we received that option 4 seemed to be the most desired action that the staff could try to initiate to look at in the areas that are identified as mixed-use town center. Those are currently zoned C1, O1, and PCD. That's general commercial, office, and planned commercial. The thought was to look at those existing zoning districts and try to incorporate some language in there that basically would say where you have a piece of property that falls within an area shown as being within the mixed-use town center on the comprehensive plan, that you would be required to follow these additional or these requirements, and then you might restrict it to certain uses within those areas. So for example, you may want to look at, and this could be kind of blended in with what Nori Winter and his group are doing with their architectural design standards, because a lot of this relates to appearance and what you're presenting as the town, the core of the town. So you could have some language in there. It talks about building placement, the materials that you're using on buildings, how you orient the building in relation to parking, the height of buildings. Some of that language in the BD4 zoning district, I think, could be dovetailed into some language for certainly the C1 zoning district. Most of the properties in the mixed-use town center are currently zoned C1. There's a few that are O1 and PCD, but most of it would be C1. I think the most bang for the buck, if you're wanting the staff to proceed with addressing this matter, would be to focus on probably the C1 and try to develop some language that would start to steer the development and redevelopment of parcels in the mixed-use town center toward this downtown that they're trying to accomplish over time. And we wanted to kind of get some feedback from you all, to see what you thought, or if you think there are other options listed there, or maybe options that aren't even listed there that you would like to talk about, that would be a better approach for the staff to take. My personal opinion would be 4 would be the best option right now, to try to more quickly address this issue, this disconnect between the plan and the zoning ordinance. But that doesn't mean that maybe option 1 or 2 couldn't also be kind of a long-term, goal as well. So how do you all feel about this?
Personally, I'd like to advocate for option number 4, and I think what is important is when you have somebody from the outside looking in, and when they go to our municipal code and they go down the zoning and they look at their C1 or their O1 or their PCD, that these things that we're talking about tonight are real clearly written in there, and it seems like that's going to be the vehicle that's going to get us from point A to point B the fastest, as well as being somewhat easier than maybe some of the other options that I personally would think would be fairly arduous. So what my thought is, again, if we're going to do, I would really, since our downtown growth plan dictates an area that does encompass C1, O1, and PCD, I think we need to do all 3. Because I really would like to keep what happened tonight from ever happening again, and I think this would be a step in the right direction.
Yeah, I agree with you. That's uncomfortable to have something like that come before us. It was just not the right use for that particular location, but that's something we definitely want to avoid in the future. That's that was included in your packet here. These are just some uses when we were looking at the existing town center district and looking at the existing C1, O1, and PCD. What uses may be considered incompatible or inconsistent with a mixed-use town center. The items there listed in red would be they're not in the current language in the zoning ordinance. They're just there for you to think about. Even in the TCD, there was a provision for a drive-through for banks and pharmacy, as you may remember, and we worked a lot with Michael Bates on that language. So I mean, it could be arranged where something like that, if it's completely hidden, I think might fit in. But it's something to think about. I don't know how you all feel about those uses, or if there are others that you feel need to be explored, or you don't think some of these are inconsistent with mixed-use town center. I think a big box entity in a mixed-use town center would probably be incompatible. That's why we put that language in under the retail sales, 50,000 square feet or greater. Of course, the tower, telecommunications tower, we'd like to proceed with making that not an option for areas that are identified as within the mixed-use town center, because we did have someone that was interested in doing that in our core downtown area. So I don't know. How do you all feel about those? The reason a lot of those are there is that they're either parking intensive, they are automobile focused, just kind of the nature of the use could be incompatible, but there's a couple there that frankly I think could be compatible, like elderly housing. I think it could be compatible with a mixed-use town center if it were
designed
correctly done. I mean, it's just
it's going to be tough to come up with an all-inclusive list, but a couple that are not on here that kind of come to mind that we ought to consider, whether or not it's compatible in this. Maybe a liquor store. Is that something? I think there's only room in the town for maybe one more permitted liquor store.
No, they're all gone.
Is that what? I'm sorry, Ron?
They're all full now.
Oh, they are full? So we're capped out? But since we're trying to be real specific with this, even if one of the liquor stores closed down in the town of Farragut, is that something that we necessarily want in our downtown town center?
Well, isn't,
My preference would be no.
May not be.
And then the other thing would maybe
wait a
be,
minute, Farragut Wine and Spirits is considered in here, isn't it?
yeah, actually, it is part of the PCD, isn't it?
I can't remember. I think
It's
might be.
that PCD goes all the way over and captures that, doesn't it?
Yeah.
I think so.
There might be something to address there, but I'm just, since we're trying to come up with a list, and it's always easier to say nothing's allowed unless otherwise permitted, but
That gives too much, yeah.
but we can't do that here.
No.
But my other things that maybe throw out for discussion is tattoo parlors. Might not necessarily be something that we'd want in our downtown. I'm
Well, there is
Vapor
language
shops.
in there that if it's not a specifically permitted use
really
in
go
that
down
zoning
that.
district,
we
it's
could
not
go
allowed.
down
And
the
tattoo
long-
parlors are not listed.
Oh, that's true. They're not
specific.
allowed in the C1 as it is.
No.
What about the
So the
Same
things-
way with like adult entertainment, that kind of stuff. If it's not specifically listed as a permitted use, then it's prohibited
in the C1? Is
in
what
any
you're talking about.
zoning district, really.
What about the smoke shops, vapor shops?
That would be just considered retail. I mean, it may be incompatible.
I'm just trying to think if we're trying to lay the groundwork for this downtown.
Well, I think, your comment is appropriate. The challenge with this is there's always new businesses coming.
That's
Yeah.
exactly right. I mean,
No-
no one heard of a vapor
Yeah,
shop years
yeah.
ago.
24 months ago, that wasn't even a term, and now you see them popping up. And so it is a real challenge. I really agree with the comments you made earlier. I like the strategy here. Quite frankly, for me, one of the items that it just depends on what business you're talking about is drive-throughs.
It,
I find drive-through to actually be one of the biggest challenges, because if you're talking about I think a lot of people, when they think about drive-through, they're going, oh, I'm looking at a fast food restaurant is what they're thinking. But today, most of the drive-throughs, you've got dry cleaners, and of course, you can't go a corner without running into a Starbucks anymore. And with CVS and Walgreens and banks, and it's just become a way of life for a lot of businesses anymore. So drive-throughs are a bit of a challenge.
It's just the intent of a
Yeah.
town center is to be more, you get out and walk to
Yeah.
it. It's a.
But when we had
struggled
the
with that
town
with the
center,
PCD.
it was a concept around a specific area, and that town center literally with the housing development, the square kind of thing. But now we're encompassing a little bit, I'm still a town center, but it's a bigger,
Yeah.
bigger area with multiple existing uses that have. We had a lot of discussion about drive-throughs.
Yeah.
Remember that for sure.
It's something that
But
needs
now
to
we
be-
could encompass everything, like I said, the cleaners to the banks.
Yeah.
Well, and there's a drive-through cleaner there already
Mhm.
yeah.
And something we need to think about is we need to probably
Well, you have-
consider providing for residential in these.
That's the other part.
Because that's the key to a successful downtown, is to get the population around that area, where you don't just have people driving in from Lenore City or wherever just to visit for the day. You got people that live there, they can walk to those businesses, and they can keep them open,
You even have co-located residents and businesses in the same structures.
Good, sure.
How residential is
Wasn't
treated
that
is gonna have to be thought about. Because that's a key element in a mixed-use town center, is mixed use. And a key part of that is residential mixed with commercial.
I'm wondering, as we're working through this, would we want to include the paragraph that we put in the new R6 and the R6 OSR about the building facade, and it's just basically tip of the iceberg when it gets to architecture, and go ahead and include it now, and then once we build our entire architectural ordinance, then
wouldn't hurt
assuming that
anything.
there's no conflicts in it, that then that would then supersede this.
Saying put a placeholder in.
Yeah, I mean, just,
Kind of a
again,
skill.
this
Yeah.
is about transparency. It's about, hey, we want you, if you're looking at our municipal code and you're looking at the zoning district, we have some expectations if you're in this TCD area. And and that's going to be one of them.
I think that would be a great suggestion, just as, at a minimum, it gets us more than what we've got right now.
Right, and like I think what Ed
While
Ed
we're
said,
working
Pull
on,
off the perfect crime.
it's a placeholder. Hey, we're making you
Get the
aware of this. Here
full-blown-
it is.
And they're
It's
aware of it.
NRC1.
Architectural
If you
standards.
fall within this zone, we want you to be aware of it, and then we'll deal with it whenever we deal with it. But at least on this go around, let's get it in there.
yeah.
You know, I think with where we're at today, we need to have, I hate to use this term because we want to have a reputation of being open to new ideas. But I think where we're at right now, we have so many different thoughts and ideas going on, and we're laying some groundwork for some other things. We need to have a certain amount of restrictiveness in here. And that doesn't mean we're not open. I mean, not much like tonight where we had discussion on this new zoning district. And as long as our attitude is one of saying, you know what, okay, it's not there, but bring something to us, educate us on why we need to think differently. And, you know, I think our community's come a long ways in the last few years with people's willingness to do that, where before, perhaps, in some cases, they would have read it and said, well, I'm not even going to look at the town of Farragut. But I think there's a balance to be found in there. But I think where we're at now, we need to be a little more restrictive with reasonableness, if that makes sense, than to miss a couple of things. Because it's easier to change your mind and allow something then you're missing the opportunity to restrict something later.
Well, we're trying to create this town center, a character,
Right.
personality for the town.
Exactly.
And so it's got to have elements of that in it.
Yeah.
We're not saying it's restrictive across the whole.
No,
From
no.
border to border of the
No.
town. We're
No.
saying that this is a special initiative towards shaping this
Yeah.
character and personality.
Do we have restrictions in the town center district zone?
Well, I was about to ask Mark,
Yeah.
c-
Oh,
do
yeah.
you have, could you, I don't have it anymore, but do you have the ordinance that you could let everybody see? Or it's on the website, the town center district, for everybody to look
We
at
just
it?
marry that
Yeah,
to
the
this?
existing town
It was
center.
it's so specific to that site.
Yeah.
It's going to be a
It is.
real challenge just to say, okay, here it is. Yeah, let's cut and paste it.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
excellent.
There's some
for
great
what
stuff.
That's
it
why,
was.
well, the
Yeah.
options is gonna be a.
Well, that's why I was thinking about
difficult
maybe
road to
taking
go.
that like the paragraph from the R6, which talks about the brick and ethos
Yeah.
and stuff like that. Let's just get that paragraph in there until we build our full-blown architectural. Now, obviously, there's a lot of other issues, a lot of great
Yeah, I
things in that
agree with
TCD that we ultimately want to incorporate.
Yeah.
But I'm thinking low-hanging fruit today.
Yeah.
I think that's an
This
excellent
kind of is a
start.
Rita,
temporary.
did that address your question?
Yes and no. For one thing, we had I'm pretty sure we had restrictions of what we did and didn't, want to see.
Yeah, the use is in TCD, and
Yeah.
that's what we went through when we came up with those,
Okay.
was trying to pick out the ones that,
That's pretty much those 13 that are right there, maybe with the exception of a couple we've talked about tonight, a liquor store or, vapor shop or
Yeah.
something like that.
But I think if everybody saw, anybody that hasn't seen it, would get an idea of what we envisioned at the time.
yeah.
Um,
Yeah, it's a very well-written zoning district, and the architectural design standards for it that are in the municipal code, and they're excellent. But again, it was targeted toward really Mayor Ford's property.
Starting from scratch.
Yeah, I mean,
And that was
that's
the thing.
what
I
it
mean,
was
had all,
doing.
we talked about the storefronts and
Right,
awnings
Right in
and
the town hall,
all sorts
this
of great
whole
things.
area and the
Yeah, but you at least get a
well.
grasp of what it is we're talking about. And then, if you pulled out some of those art things where they were showing what it might look like, that's a good start,
Concept.
I think.
Okay.
Because they had some elevations as well, in it,
Yeah.
as well as the plan with the,
Yes,
the
there
park
are some
area and
diagrams.
the town center.
Yeah. I like the idea of someday having a more visual zoning ordinance altogether, to where, kind of like what I anticipate is going to come before us with the architectural design standards, where you've got the wording, the language, what you're trying to do, and then you give people visual options, visual examples of what you're talking about, and what would be acceptable versus what wouldn't be. That would be really helpful, I think, for like the gentleman with the bank that owned the Silver Spoon property, to know what he can do with the property, how he can market it, and he needs to know that. That's a fair request, and that could be, the same with a lot of other properties in this mixed-use town center.
So
yeah,
are you
we-
thinking of taking the elderly housing?
Well, I don't know. I was just looking through some of these things.
Another thing Mark and I talked about when we were talking earlier this week was the mortuaries. I don't know any downtown, quote unquote, in East Tennessee that doesn't have a mortuary in it. They're right there on Main Street.
It's because it's a parking intensive, and it's not something that would generate a lot of pedestrian traffic, you know, other than you're just going into that particular one facility for that one incident. But what we're trying to do is build uses that would stimulate an active pedestrian environment. So
I
that's
guess
probably-
mortuaries probably don't have a lot of access.
We hope not.
Point of clarity on that.
Yeah, that would.
They're stiff.
Yeah.
Well, you know, I'll just go back to what I said earlier. I think where we're at now is pretty good. It's we don't want to make it too loose, because if we do that, you can't turn back the clock. I think we're better off to start where we're at. People, if somebody brings something new to us, or they have some thoughts and ideas that will make it palatable, then, you know, we can modify this. But if once the horse is out of the barn, it makes it awful tough.
Well, also with the land use plan, they had some really good drawings and some of all these areas
Yes.
with their ideas, which I think would be beneficial
Yeah, I would
for
refer
some
back
people
to
to
the
see.
land use plan and look through that's kind of in the back of the document, but they talk about the downtown concept, the pre-approved plan. They focus on the different kind of the major sections of what could be the mixed-use town center. And
One area that I was impressed with was this area over here in front of the schools of their drawings of what could be there with a lot of money. I keep bringing up a lot of money, but we're talking a lot of money.
Yeah, it's going to be hard to write
And
the
it's not
ordinance.
coming out of our pockets.
Kinda-
It's got to
gonna
be,
be
you
tough.
know, somebody who is enthusiastic and has the money and willing to do it. Noah?
I'm enthusiastic, but I don't have the money.
Probably what we'll probably try to do is just try to tackle the ordinance, and
Yeah.
and it may have to be tackled in increments. I mean, we want to get something in place quickly that will at least give us a baseline, like Noah was saying with the architectural requirements, so that we got something better than what we have now, and so that people know what the expectation is. But then, you know, we can always keep working on things, because this is kind of you know, it's going to be tough, because what you're trying to do is provide for redevelopment options on something like Silver Spoon, and then also a large piece of property that could be developed from scratch, and, you know, kind of blending those two, and give enough flexibility to do that. So
I don't know if Betty and if you have Ed and if you and Louise have seen the land use plan that the pictures that the people came up with.
I haven't seen
I think that would be
Are you talking about in the town center?
everybody has a copy of a land use plan, right?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, just looking, it's kind of in the back. There's several different, and those are just some rough visual options, but
right. It's kind of pie in the sky type stuff that they
Yeah.
came up with, but still, it gives you an idea of what can be done.
what's really tricky is trying to build something like that, again, on a small site that's already developed, without requesting something that's unreasonable for the developer. I mean, to me, it's unreasonable to say, well, you just need to tear up the whole site and start over. If, you know, we need to try to work toward allow them to do something reasonable, but that wouldn't be inconsistent with the further development of a downtown. So I think starting with architectural, you know, standards would be huge, because that's really a big element of this. And then trying to work on how people think about placing laying out their sites instead of putting the parking out around the periphery and kind of automobile-focused development to try to encourage more of the buildings up closer to the road, with the parking around the back, and make it more pedestrian friendly and open spaces, and small pocket parks and things that would invite more pedestrian traffic. But again, key to this long term is getting the residential density up in this area around here. So I mean, that's going to happen for downtown to be successful, in my opinion. So I think we do need to think about how to deal with residential as it could be applied in this context.
I know at one of the conferences, state planning conferences that I've been to, they had some out-of-state developers talking about the fact that they put in a development and they had a drugstore, and they were going to put housing above this drugstore, and the people with the drugstore were just adamant about, we don't want somebody living up there who can tunnel down into the drugstore at night and steal drugs. But they came up with a way to secure that, and the drugstore wanted in this shopping area or this development because it was going to be a moneymaker for them. But they just needed to feel secure about their drugstore, and so there are ways you can do that sort of thing.
Whatever the case, I think it's time to get on with this. We need to make it a priority, because I don't want to see again what we did tonight. We should be laying down that overlay as soon as we possibly can to avoid just that.
We'll put together some language, to present to you next time. I think that, just similar to what we did with amending the R6, I think it was helpful just to go ahead and put something in draft form, very rough draft form, to get you to react to it. I think that seemed to be the best way to move the process along more quickly. So we'll try to work on that and see what we can come up with, and hopefully have a good discussion about it next time. Does anybody have anything else to add that they want?
Maybe to add to that list, or at least consider. And I had it was not in the town of Farragut, but I had a tenant sneak into a building one time under the disguise of being a standard walk-in clinic where you go in and you get your antibiotics and they check your blood pressure and things like that, and it was a pain clinic. And the hardship that it created, and the heartburn for me, and the hardship it created for the other tenants around that building, their customers and their clients, was unbelievable. It was the biggest nightmare that I've ever had in a landlord-tenant relationship. And I'm not sure how to address that, and we've had one or two in the town of Farragut. I won't pick on them by name. Mark probably knows the ones I'm talking about. And the issue is not what goes on inside, but it's what happens in the parking lot. And until our state legislator can really figure out how to crack down, they tried in January of 2012 or 2013, and it helped, but I still have this tenant. And I can't tell you how many thousands of dollars that I spent legally fighting this tenant. Finally got him out. Basically, they said, well, we're not leaving. And but what happened was, in the parking lot, they would real quickly have a whole car full of folks. They would come in usually from out of county, out of state. They would hang out in the parking lot all day and wait for their appointments to go in and get their prescriptions filled. And there's a time and a place for pain management. I'm not knocking pain management at all. I'm just saying that there is, I'm not sure how to address it, but I want to throw it out because I have personal experience with it. And they would sit in their car all day long, and they would throw all their trash out into the parking lot. There was things that happened where somebody else would drive up and they would get out of their car and they would exchange money for something. And we dealt with the city of Knoxville. It's in the city of Knoxville, and so so have somebody call me, so we'll call the Knox Police Department. They would throw their dirty diapers out in the parking lot. The same sort of thing happened in the town of Farragut too. It has happened, and it's created a lot of problems. But if you put it in a denser area, in a downtown area, and you get all these people loitering outside on the sidewalk and in their cars, that is not the downtown that we want. Again, I do not want it. I don't know how to address this without being discriminatory, but if we just need to put some disclosure in there.